Hey everyone, I'm Travis Wright, and you're listening to I'm a Fan Of, your show for music, comedy, and more. As always, if you are a musician, a comedian, or just someone that does something interesting, please reach out to me on Instagram at TravisCanListen. You can find me on Facebook at I'm a Fan Of, or you can reach out to me through the website at I'mAFanOfPod.com. Of course, if you just enjoy the show, please follow me there as well and like and subscribe to the podcast. This episode, we have one of my absolute favorites, a stand-up comic from right here in North Texas, Lawrence Rosales. He's been on the show multiple times. If you're a fan of the show, you're already familiar with him. I hope by now you've gone out to watch his comedy and watch him live. He is phenomenal. If you haven't got a chance to watch him yet, please check him out on social media. Go see a show. And we have great conversations. Whether there's a mic in front of me or not, I always enjoy talking to this guy whenever I bump into him in public or, whatever it may be. And I think he's just a fantastic guy. He's had a really interesting journey up to this point, and I think he's finally gotten to a great point in his life where his comedy and just his personal self is really getting to the best possible place it could be. So please enjoy this interview. Please go check out one of his shows. This is Lawrence Rosales. The I'm a Fan Of podcast, music, comedy, and more. All right, dude, welcome back to the show, Lawrence Rosales.
Welcome back.
Dude, always a pleasure. My wife was very excited that you're coming on the show today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Anytime
I talk about going to a show, she's like, is Lawrence going to be on that show? And I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. I really enjoy, I've had a couple comics be like, oh, my husband or my wife is like, you're their favorite.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, oh, you really appreciate that.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's crazy to be somebody's favorite, isn't it?
It is.
Because I've only known you for maybe 4 years now.
Okay.
And
so, boy, you've really seen a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I didn't even know you were on the roller coaster for like the first 2 years. Because it's just you hear the grumblings around, and it's like I never take anyone's like I heard this, I heard that until it's pretty well established, But yeah, it's wild to think that. Remind me again, how far along in comedy are you now?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
To know that you have real fans now, people who really know your work.
Yeah, it's the name of your podcast. Fans to me, I'm getting better. I'm working on it. I think that's been the last year of my life has been this big mental health journey of trying to be more positive, trying to trust in the universe. But it's even whenever someone says fan, I have this immediate shoulders get tight where I'm I wouldn't a fan, that seems like a pretty lofty statement.
Yeah, it's weird, and that's weird because it's that's the goal. Is you want people to like your stuff, but then you're also ooh, gross.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's I don't know. I guess you got to learn to be a fan of yourself.
Yeah.
Before you can accept the idea that somebody else is a fan.
Yeah, that's tricky. I don't know, but it's nice. Anyway, I've liked all the growth. Can I tell you though, I'm always worried I'm going to hear some story of you falling back into drugs and stuff and just going crazy. Is everybody always just looking at you like that? Or
no, nobody really, no one really, I think no one really expresses that concern to me.
Okay.
That much. But it took me, I'm almost 3 years now.
God, it's crazy to think it's been that long.
Yeah, almost 3 years clean. And I've had some crazy, took some pretty hard hits the last year and a half. And so I'm at a point now where I feel very if you're a drug addict, you're a drug addict and you have to admit that, and you always are. You're just a clean one.
Yeah.
But I'm at a place now where there's no going back.
That's good.
That. Yeah.
Doesn't that, I always wonder with guys who've gone down a path like that, does it suck to know that that's just such a defining feature now?
It is, but recently in my comedy, I can feel I'm very much I can tell where my mental health, I can tell where my brain is at during the day based on if I'm playing music. I can almost feel it in the guitar where my mind is. And whenever I'm on stage now in comedy, typically I'm so loose. That the sets are kind of water, they're always kind of reflecting where I'm at that day.
Yeah.
And I've realized recently the new material I've kind of been working on that I thought was funny is just the idea that I have adopted this moniker of it's one of those things you want to go back and have lunch at where you had your worst day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I've kind of I felt there's I never was doing crack. But whenever you're doing the things I was doing, the word crackhead got thrown around a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, and I caught myself being offended by someone saying like, "Oh, these crackheads," and I was like, "Hey, whoa!" I'm a little offended by that. And then I thought it was funny to be like the idea of being like, "Oh, I'm an ex-crackhead," and you know what? Things are going pretty good for me. You know what I mean? Like, what's your excuse? You know? So it's like, and I've started talking about that on stage a little bit of being like an ex-crackhead who's like doing well. And I think that's funny.
Yeah. I saw like the clip you sent me. It's like, first of all, I saw you recently. So, you know, when we were testing out like how to record different stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like every time I see you now, there's new material. And I know that that's the goal, right? But it's just not that way when I watch a lot of people. And it's exciting, man, because most of your set now, I'm like, oh, I don't think I've heard that one before.
Okay. And did you, I thought that set to me was about where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was there was probably 7 minutes in there that I just did that night that I didn't, there was no plan for any of that. It was just, I got into the moment to such a degree that now we're just talking.
Well, now, but you're in that sweet spot of your career now where you've got enough material too, where you can change up night to night, whatever you want to do. And so that's the fun too, is I know I'm not going to see your same show twice because I've seen you multiple times where it's like you've got your grab bag of material that you know will do well. Yeah. And then you know when you're getting it, like if you have a night where you can play around and try some new stuff, or it's like, I need to get some laughs right now, you know? So that's always kind of fun to watch you because I know you just have a variety of things now.
And I've learned that for me, and I don't know how other comics, I know I have ADD a bit. I have a hard time focusing. So I've learned, it's like now with my sets, it's like whenever you go for like a jog, when you walk out the front door, like you can go left or you can go right. Okay. So we're going to start off pretty simple. It's a very easy decision, you know, but then as you run down the next street, are you going to go left or right? And then next thing you know, you're very far from your front door and you can make a series of different decisions so it's like, it's just going for a run every day. Every time you're doing a set, you know. When I started, like I got music became, it really saved my life. It became a very important part of my mental health. Where like the last I grew up playing music my whole life. Yeah. I
remember you telling me you did like ska band and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but I played in several different. But the ska band was always the funny one.
Yeah, okay.
Like so that's always like it's like a crackhead. You know, it's like
I remember that because I love punk rock music so much. So anytime I hear someone say ska, I'm like, what? What was that? What was that?
I grew up playing like classic rock, and then I found punk because punk was the coolest thing in the world. Where punk was like, I was raised on classic rock, so it's like to be a musician, you had to be Hendrix, you had to be McCartney. You know, you had to be like these people are gods. So whenever you're a young boy learning the drums and learning a bass and guitar, it's like the idea that you could be in a band seemed not plausible when you're in 5th or 6th grade. And then around 8th, 9th grade, I discovered punk. And it was like hearing the Ramones or bands I like Saves the Day. And like you would hear these records. And I remember this light bulb turned on because I was like, oh, I can write this music.
I can do this.
Yeah. And I have friends that play instruments. We can do this. And then all of a sudden, everything was possible. And that's what I loved about like punk rock music. It's like for younger kids, it's like, oh no, you can write.
Dude, that was my exact same journey. Like I saw some kids, I'll never forget it. It was either like 7th or 8th grade. We had a talent show in like middle school. And two of the kids in my grade, like one played drums, one played bass. And then some kid from the high school. I was in a small town. So like the elementary, middle school, and high school are all like right across from each other. They're all there. And he played guitar, and they covered, I think it was Silverchair and MXPX. But I had never seen anything like that. You know, like, I don't think I'd ever really seen like a live performance that wasn't like a cheesy greatest hits cover band or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I wasn't familiar with that music either yet. So I was like, what is this? This is so weird. And it's like if you went back, it was probably a very shitty performance.
Of course.
But it was like, this is incredible. And that's what made me want to go like, I got to get a guitar. I got to learn how to play something. And same thing, my parents, it was all classic rock all the time. So I got the...
which is such a blessing, I think. Like, dude, now when my son's in the bathtub, like I play the Beatles just because I just want to like get it in his head.
I think you need to have classic rock in your system no matter what you end up liking. It's like I feel like you just have to experience... I was talking to my father-in-law about it because he loves classic rock, and he's like, do you think like people will still be listening to this? Like, he's like, I know my generation does. He's like, your generation kind of does. He's like, because we were talking about Greta Van Fleet. You heard about them?
Yeah.
Which is like new Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, it's like no hate on that, but it's like, it's not Led Zeppelin. But then we were kind of shitting on it at first because it's like, isn't it weird that they all thought they found some kind of like new sound? Not the band, the people listening to it. Because one of his coworkers went to a concert, and he's like, dude, it was all like 20-something-year-olds watching this band.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then you show them Led Zeppelin, and their mind gets blown. And it's like, yeah, but that's kind of cool that unknowingly they loved classic rock. You know what I mean? Like, it still ended up getting into their brain. And then we started going, oh, yeah. Like, they actually do like classic rock. They just needed their own version of it.
Of course, and I think a lot of, like, I think the younger generation, like, where as we get older, we're so hard on, like, the younger generation. But it's like, I think they're as aware as they have to, I don't know, maybe they have more options because of the internet. Like, you know, I grew up around Milk Crate records and all this stuff. So it's like, I guess it's like whenever we were kids, you know, the radio only had so many choices.
Yeah.
And, you know, you were much more limited to what you had access to. So, but I think that stuff's always going to exist. I don't think there's going to be a day where people forget the Beatles.
That's what I was talking about. I was like, I think the like 60s and 70s on, it's like, man, just because recording was so much better and things last longer is like, I genuinely think like 150 years from now, people are still going to be listening to that.
Yeah, of course.
It's just going to be that good. And he's like, okay, that makes me feel better. I was like, all right. Like, he was having a crisis that like this music's going to be forgotten. I was like, I think we're going to be good, man.
So yeah.
I was like, every generation, like anyone who picks up a guitar is somehow going to find Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. It's just going to come
and
up.
for the next generation, it's going to be like, they're going to be like John Mayer. Have you ever heard of John Mayer? You know what I mean?
It's old school.
Yeah, it is old school. It's going to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know,
it is cool though to think about like it made me think about this younger generations now, the joy of like music discovery, right? It's like when you were a teenager and you found like new music that you'd never heard of, like you said, when you started listening to like Saves of the Day and stuff, and you're just like, what is this? It's totally different than anything. And it's like there's this weird excitement around that. And then I got jealous. I was like, I still get excited about new music, but it's not the same. It's not the same as when you're young and it's like it blows your mind for the first time.
Yeah, I can kind of let the 20 same songs run through my day every day for a while. You know, they're just getting older and getting more boring.
Yeah.
But music is so influential. This is, I think, something I learned a long time ago. I think music is so influential for younger kids that, you know, I used to write comic books. And whenever you're writing them and you have to send a script for somebody else to the artist to draw, you have to describe things in certain ways. And a trick that I learned is whenever you were describing teenagers through 20-somethings, that a great way to describe how you want them to look is you just describe what kind of music they listen to. And that would help the artist know exactly what they needed to draw.
Oh, that's pretty dead on. That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way to look at like how influential music is to young people or to 20-somethings.
It's weird, man. Do you ever think about why music even matters? Why it's even important? You know, like I don't mean like getting all deep and philosophical, but it's like, really, why is it?
It is a deep and philosophical question, though.
But I don't mean in. It's like, yeah, you know, it's easy to be like it's art and passion and all those buzzwords, but really, it's like, what is it that through evolution, like when monkeys turned into man, it was like we got to make these noises and rhythms, and it's like every culture likes music, even though it's their own version, right? But it's like, why? It's like, why do you need to laugh or why do you need to yawn?
Yeah,
it's like, what is it? What's the purpose?
I think it's like, you know, it's like I don't know, like when you light a candle or like, you know, it's like whenever you decorate this room the way you want it to look on this video, you know, music is like, it's just like this, it's this decor for your mind or your soul.
Yeah,
you know, it's like this kind of, it's the right vibration for me for how I'm feeling right now. Yeah,
but like I'll look at my dog and he doesn't care about music.
Yeah, but he's a dog. You know what I mean?
You know,
I think even young children, like I love I have a video where I'm playing that I recorded just for myself, and it's I was like, I'll write these little songs for my kid.
Oh yeah,
and I'm playing him something, and the way he just starts grooving to, like at first when I first was playing it, like you can see in the video, his eyes get crazy. Like he's looking at his mom, then he's looking at me, and looking at his mom, looking at me, and then as I keep going, he's just like. He's got his little milk bottle in his hand, and he just starts dancing. Yeah, it's like you could see it even there. It's like he has no idea what's going on, but he's like, I know I'm supposed to move my body to this because something's happening. Yeah, that is pretty great. Remind me your kid's age. My son's 3. 2. That's right. About a year behind. Okay, yeah. He like we have all these great clips. First of all, like what a time to be alive, where I can whip my phone out and record any moment, anytime. Because there were times when he's just like a baby. And he's crying, and you can like strum nonsense on a guitar, and he's just like, "What is that?" And then, but you can film it and get this great clip, and it's like even that early, right? Laying on his back, just like a turtle who's stuck, and there's still a response to it. And it's like, what is that? That's a great question. I mean, there is something inside of us where I think it just resonates. And I've applied like, so I played music my whole life, but then like 2 years ago, it was the day my son was born. I grew up with a Martin acoustic that my grandpa gave me.
Oh, wow.
That's like a keepsake that I still have of him. And so the day my son was born, because with all my drug addiction, all this stuff, like I wasn't even allowed to be there when he was born. I was clean at the time, but I wasn't trusted.
Yeah.
I remember showing up to the hospital and they were like, we can't prove that she's here. And I was like, I get it. So I had to leave. So what I did is I went to Guitar Center and I bought like a really nice Martin. And I took to the park where we met, because this is how corny and cheesy and just I like to romanticize life a bit. But I took it to the park where we'd had this great date when we were first dating, and I cut a little piece into the guitar case, and I wrote like a note to him about how we met, and about the good times, and about it's the fact it's the day he was born, and I buried that note inside the guitar case. I hid it. So I was like, whenever he's 18, he can have that guitar. Whenever he's even older, or I'm ready to go, I'm checking out, I'll let him know, like, hey, there's a note inside that guitar case. You better go find it.
That's going to be awesome.
You know what I mean? So, and I love that. But, like, when I bought it, it helped me. Like, I started, like, because I played my whole life. I can play, I'm well-versed as a musician. And, but I've been playing that guitar every day the last 2 years. And it helped me with comedy a lot. Because, like, you're always trying to find a new way to look at your art. I think if you're doing any kind of art, you can't just wake up every day and do the same thing. Like you said, I see comics that, like, will do the same set for so long, and like I'll have these little linchpins, but they are there. I'm trying to build pillars that allow me different moves. Right? Like I know if these pieces are here, I can now navigate this thing in a different way. And it's the same thing. Like you play guitar, so you're aware of like a scale, right? Like a blues scale. We're playing blues in E minor, right? So you know where all the notes are for that scale, and no matter what order you kind of hit them in, as long as you're hitting all the notes of that scale, it sounds good. And I feel like comedy with my mind has become, I started looking at it that way, where it's like, okay, I know all these bits work, so I don't have to play them in the same order. I can change it up. I can turn this into a chord. I can turn this into this, and I can do little riffs, and I'm just trying to find like a good rhythm to get through it. And that's how I kind of started looking at comedy and set list. So it kind of freed me to like, okay, I have all these, this isn't a set list. These are notes on a fretboard. And I want to play it a little differently tonight. But it's always, blues E, blues A, blues C. And that's how I kind of think about it. And I think getting back into music helped reinvigorate me with comedy quite a bit.
Yeah. Something to take your mind off of it where you're not constantly thinking about it as comedy.
Oh, that's a big thing for me too, is like I grew up writing and playing music. So I have this freedom now I found in music where like when you're doing comedy, you have to write all this stuff out. You have to try it out. You have to work it out with audiences. You have to memorize it. It gets in your brain. You live with it. And I love now that I play music and like I will write like the bones of a song, and I'll get something where I'm like, ooh, that sounds great. I love the way that sounds. And then I love that the next day I wake up and it's kind of gone.
Yeah. Oh, you love that?
I love it.
I hate that.
I love it because with comedy, you can't really do that with comedy. You have to like everything. Oh, I got to say this, that happened. Like when I was doing that set and there's all these riffs in there, a lot about it was about me wanting to do drugs. But like, it was just a joke about me wanting to do that. And, but like, I'll be like, okay, I watched the video. I'm like, okay, can I turn that into something and navigate this? So now this music's become this freedom for me where I can like, I can find something and just get in this groove. And I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. And I love it.
Yeah.
And then you just let it go.
I don't like that.
If I didn't have comedy,
then
I wouldn't feel that way about it. But it's like these just two separate entities.
That's true.
Now.
I mean, it's good. It's good. That's like it's great that it's that way for some people. I have like, how it is. You pick up a guitar and there's the things you're like go-tos that you'll play that aren't even like real songs or anything. They're just little riffs or whatever you like playing. And it's like, I feel like I've built up all those over the years. And if I ever forget one, I'm like, no. And so even if I just play something today and forget it tomorrow, I'm like, damn, I'll never get that back. I don't even remember the first part. Whatever. I don't remember it. It's like, it's right there. You can feel it and it's gone. And even though like I don't go perform or anything, it just bothers me.
Yeah, see, and I like music now too because like now it's become a personal thing where it's like it's just for me. Maybe if like there's a riff I like, maybe I'll record like a little 20-second clip of it. Yeah, maybe put on social media just because I enjoy it. You know what I mean? And I'm free to do so.
I've got all these clips on my phone that I record that I'm like, maybe I'll turn these into songs someday.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like just that. And then you look and you're like, man, I've been doing this for like 6 years, 7 years. 8 years. Like, I'm not doing anything with these.
So it's okay to let them go. You know what I mean? It's like I was working on a piece right before I drove up here today, and I really like it. Like I think it's a very pretty piece. It's like in D and D minor and C, and I like it a lot. But I was like, oh, and what I do now is like I'll play that same different version of it every day for like a week until I get it where I'm like, now it's exactly how I want it. And then I just
let it go.
Send it out in the water and I let it go.
That's nice, man. That's nice. Dude, you seem so much like I can tell you're happier and clean and off drugs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way you talk about everything is very, very different than the first time I ever met you.
Oh, really?
And there was nothing wrong with the first time I met you, but it's just two different people. I still remember this moment where I don't think we had met yet, but I made my wife come and watch you, and we were sitting on like the side of the stage at Hyenas, so we're getting like a profile view the whole time. And you were doing lots more weird hand movements and gestures then. Her first comment was like, he's really funny. I was like, yeah. And she goes, he's on something though. And I was like, really? And she's like, oh yeah, 100%. And then she started describing all the movements and ticks and things you probably didn't realize you were doing. And you know now, but
I still talk like this. I still do so much stuff with my body. It's just like
but there's a
thing.
Different vibe to it.
Oh, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't even know you then. And then I was like, maybe, all these comics, they do a little something. And then, and then later on, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you seem so much more, it seems like you're very happy and accepting of like where you're at right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I am. Like I think, I love being a dad. Like that was a big change for me.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see my son and, watch him grow. It's just like whenever something exists, whenever something's bigger than you. Because like, when you're married or in relationships, you love this other person. And especially when you're married, it's like an honored thing. But the kid it's a different.
It's totally different. I think it's that helplessness where it's like, you're counting on me. Because like a spouse, a loved one, it's like, as much as it would hurt to separate or split up or divorce, you'll figure it out, right? Both of you will figure it out. You're independent people but it's like that kid just needs you. It's like, and then like, I'm probably more paranoid than you are, but you just realize, you start looking around, you're like, everything can kill this kid and everything can fuck this kid up. Like mentally, it's like we started we put him in like a baby gymnastics class thing. And tonight was the first one that he went to. And it's like, it's going fine. It's all basic stuff. But it's like, I catch myself like, you're looking at the instructor who's helping, and you're like, does this person know what the fuck they're doing?
Yeah.
It's like, of course they do. It's a 3-year-old doing like, he's jumping on a little trampoline. He's not doing anything right now. But you just catch yourself like, all of a sudden I understand like the animals in the wild and their instinct to just protect. It's like you understand like a mama grizzly bear that will murder anything around that cub.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right. But thankfully it's never come to that,
It's a beautiful thing. I think whenever comedy moved to like the second or third most important thing in my life, I realized that it made me better at it. Like I was reading, like that's why I've also been like, I've been joking with my friends like stability is my new kink. But like I've been on this mental health journey the last year. Like so I read a lot of different books about things, and I was reading is actually the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert, and she wrote this book called Big Magic, and it's about having a relationship with art. And she had this great point about how like if you can get everything else in your life stable, like you're not depending on your art to pay all your bills, you can have a healthy relationship with it. But if you're depending on art to pay all of your bills, or you're leaning your entirety of yourself on your art, that it becomes a codependent kind of situation. So I think having that, like reading that and realizing that, and realized that I'd kind of made that move for myself just because my son was born and it just changed me. It's created a much healthier relationship with what I'm doing.
It's good. I mean, it's good to know that it's important, but it's not like your sole identity. That's a big deal. I do think about that a lot with really young comics. When you see them and the way they approach stuff, like I remember one comic was like, all I need to do, they were above an open micer, like they're probably hosting at this point, and this was before the pandemic, and they're like, all I need to do is get in a position where I can make like 30, 40 grand a year, and I can just road dog it, and that's good for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's not, man. It's like eventually something else is going to come into your life, and you're going to need more, like you said, more stability than that.
Yes.
And it's not going to be enough to just go like comedy condo to comedy condo. And it's like, that sounds good because you're young and you're just, for lack of a better word, you're just a little immature still.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, no, it shouldn't be, like writing and that should be a very, like one of the most important things. It's like, but you really do need to have other outlets. Otherwise, you're going to be so zoned. That's how like you get these great comics who can't stop talking about the fucking airport and that kind of stuff.
It's like if you get in a relationship with somebody and you love them 100%, but all you do all day is just follow them around and talk to them, and you guys are just obsessed with each other all the time.
Oh yeah.
Eventually, that's going to go away.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that Elizabeth Gilbert book about like just having a relationship. Like, and I do like the idea of like that there is a spirit in art, and if you're harassing it, it doesn't want to be harassed by you. So you have to build this healthy connection with it, and then you're going to be at a higher vibration with the spirit that is communicating with you about what wants to be said.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having this realization recently. It's like, because I journal, like this is another part of my mental health. Like I journal almost every day. I try to I like to reflect. I like reflecting. I like trying to get my thoughts because I get very scatterbrained. My head feels like a dirty room sometimes. So it's like I try to cobble together thesis statements about how I feel about things, because then that allows me to kind of be free of them, or at least start working on the next problem.
Yeah.
But in that book, she was talking about having this healthy relationship with art, and that's been like a big thing in my life right now. But I was reflecting, like, I want to. I realized one of the things that I love about comedy, because I grew up on comics that were saying things that were either warping my brain when I was a kid, or they were saying things that made me feel better about my situation.
Okay.
And I've gotten to this place in comedy where it's like every line isn't going to be that. But I'd really like it if 80% of it was. And just having, like, I found, like, I need a purpose. I need a purpose in my life. And that's what helps me stay healthier and happier as long as I'm serving something.
Yeah.
So, I know I'm serving my child. I know I'm serving the people around me that I care about. And in my art, I want to be serving the purpose of trying to say something that means something, or trying to make other people feel seen, or feel heard, or feel understood.
Yeah.
And that's been like a big, I think sometimes, like, I think I'm such a nice guy to everybody, but when I am in the back of the room watching other comics, I'm an asshole. And like, I don't verbalize it to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I'll say great set if they could be killing and doing well. But that is the one time I'm an asshole, because like I see a lot of stuff and I just think it works. It was okay. There's no substance there. Like, you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for them.
That's one of my biggest beefs with maybe our local comedy scene is, and I'm not in a position to tell these people this, right? I don't know them well enough, and
it's not our job.
I wouldn't dare, but I want to go up to so many of these comics when I watch shows and just tell them, like, man, you're funny. What you have, you're capable of being very funny, but I don't know a fucking thing about you. You were just putting together some little, basically knock jokes, in my opinion. There's no, like you said, there's no substance, and it's like, but I'm not demeaning you. You're funny. I know you're funny, but it's like, man, you could be so much funnier. And it's like, give me a little. It's like, without dropping any names, it's like I've heard. Excuse me. I've heard of some people's struggles or their weird things about them, right? That they're like trying to be too cool and they don't want that to come out. And it's like, I really think you need that to come out. It's like, that's so much more interesting than all the bullshit I just heard from you.
Exactly.
And so when they cross that barrier, when they start getting into that kind of, they just crack that shell open and they expose all those vulnerabilities. I'm like, that to me is my favorite comedy. Right. It's like, I think that's why I connect with guys like Bill Burr and Louis C.K. so much. Is like, they are willing to make themselves look like pieces of shit on stage, just to make you laugh. It's like they're giving you really dirty stuff about themselves. And it's like, oh, but everybody's got that dirt in them.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody in the world is hiding it.
Yes.
And even as a fan, there's like a release when you see like, oh, that person's kind of fucked up too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. And they can laugh about it. They're not like, they just shared that to a room full of people.
Yeah, I had that moment on my set the other day where I was like, I said out loud, I was like, I don't want to explain that to a bill collector. Like, I'll tell you all 300 of you, but I don't want to tell a bill collector that money's gone. It's on his ass for crack cocaine. Like, I don't want to, like you guys, we've already established I'm funny, but the bill collector, you can't just say that and hope they won't call you back.
Before I forget that clip, you've got a little moment where you've got a couple tags on the recent Allen shooting.
Oh yeah. You know what's funny about
That's what I love though. It's like fucking go for it.
Push them.
Yes.
And I love that. That's another thing that I think like the lack of something creates more space for actually being open about it. Is like whenever I went through like my really dark time, and I don't know why those two seem somewhat together for me, is it's like I used to be very political. I used to be super political. And then as the older I got, as I had to free myself of, to get through my own rehab, like I had to free myself of some things that like don't serve me. And like being angry about political things that happen, I saw around me, the other people around me, like people that get really worked up about politics, it does not help anything. It upsets their day and probably the people around them, but it doesn't seem to help the actual thing.
Unless you're really active. And I don't mean activism like I made a post, I went and protested. It's like if you're upset about, a community that is being gentrified or something, right? It's like, what are you actively doing in that community to help them?
Yeah.
Are you just posting about it? Are you just bitching? And I'm the same way. It's like I think a lot of that's the punk rock stuff is you get really motivated to do stuff and you realize like I'm not really doing anything though.
Of course.
I'm complaining a lot.
Yeah.
I'm annoying people, but am I actually doing anything? And that's kind of the big key where it's like if you're not really involved in it, like you said, you're just ruining your day and somebody else's day by getting worked up about it.
So I do that punchline, and I'm not trying at all to diminish like what happened, but turning it into a joke to imply that it is a joke because you guys don't do anything. You're going to groan at a joke, but like maybe do something. And I don't know what to tell you to do, but groaning at a joke's not going to help.
Nope.
You know what I mean? But at least now, hopefully, you're a little bit more aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not political. I've been saying this line on stage recently where it's like, I think it's also just as men get older and women get older, it's like, I've been saying like, if you're alone for too long as a man, you start putting chips in bottles or you start storming the Capitol. I think maybe love is the answer. I don't think anybody in love is storming the Capitol. Do you see these guys? So I think it's once again like the full turn. It's like removing yourself from politics allows you to kind of look at it and play with it a little bit more with an audience about like, hey, I see you guys, and like and also my thesis statement on that is like I think politics at some point became like this. It's like this gladiator sport for poor people, and these wealthy entities are just in the stands and they're laughing at you.
Oh yeah,
they're laughing at you, fighting at each other.
It's definitely like it's the new football.
Yeah,
because that's what most sports were created for way back in the day. Were like keep them entertained while we kind of do this stuff over here. It's like like the NFL is the new form of the Coliseum and gladiators.
Yeah,
that's really what it is. When you think about how much you care, like when you see someone breaking their TV in their own house because a team lost. It's like,
oh yeah,
bro.
Well, it's like it's the political stuff and the sports like cross pollinating each other.
Sure.
Where it's like,
are you
like,
red or blue? You red or blue, bro?
Well, it's like if I was a writer right now, if I was still doing comic books and I was describing adults, like if I wanted to like help you with words understand how somebody dresses or what they look like, I could describe how they feel politically.
Yeah, 100%.
Instead of music for children, it's politics for adults. Like I can just tell you how they feel about politics, and you probably be able to draw what they drive, what they dress like, and what they're drinking.
Dude, it's crazy. Like I love reading comments on like electric cars. I think electric cars are the future. I think it's going to happen, and I think they're great. And it's like you're in the beginning phases. To me, it's the same as when the gas car put the horse out of business. The electric car is going to put the gas car out of business, and that's just a fact. It's just a matter of time. But
it's like the iPod, or do you want the heavy CD case you got to reach behind you to get?
It's got anti-skip though.
Yeah. Do you remember those? God, you remember mowing a lawn before anti-skip? Yeah. Oh my God,
and
so many lawns.
And it's like, but you'll read comments like if somebody like a magazine like puts out just an article, an unbiased article about like so-and-so says they're going to try to produce this electric car that's going to have this range and cost about this much. And then the comments will just slowly, like by about the 5th or 6th comment, it's already political. It's already like this liberal bullshit or this whatever. And it's like, oh my God, guys, what are y'all doing? You're so intense about nothing.
About nothing.
It's like, don't buy the fucking car if you don't want it. That's it.
But it's become a mobile phone sport for people.
I have a guy at work that I work with. He loves just reading all of the news sites he can all day long at work in his downtime. And he just sits there and it's like he, searches for something, scrolls, and it's just like, it's fucking bullshit. Searches for something, scrolls, can you fucking believe this? And it's just all day long he's just getting upset about these issues. And it's like, dude, just stop looking at that.
Yeah, you're in a cubicle.
Doing?
What are you even going to do about anything? Leave a comment?
Yeah, and it's just totally like he's doing that over the shoulder, like if you believe this shit, trying to get you to engage. And it's like, dude, I'm not biting on this. I don't care.
And to be clear, I think being informed, being aware, I think being politically active, I think all of these things are healthy. But I think if you're letting things you can't control through politics ruin your day and your spouse's day and your friends' days and parties and birthday parties and Thanksgiving and Christmas, like that's probably, it gets toxic at a point and you look like an idiot.
Oh, yeah.
People talk about it after you leave. That like, God, he can't stop.
Well, and the reality is like you never change anyone's mind that way. So what are you doing? You're wasting. You're better off just playing it cool and just being like, oh, you think that? Oh, okay. And then they'll be almost more intrigued that you're not upset by anything. And then maybe you'll actually get somewhere down the line, But I don't know. I think definitely having a kid made me care way less about politics. Because you realize it's like, man, I'm on such a small, granular level here with him. That stuff is just a waste of my energy at this point, about raising him. Like you said, it's good to be informed. It's good to worry about bigger picture issues. But to sit there and get like involved in every little, like, what are all the indictment charges on Trump right now? I need to look at all of them and know them. It's like, no, I'm good.
It's also a distraction because there's a very, very small sect of people this doesn't apply to, but it is minute. But for the most part in this country, if you list all, you have to zig so many times where you should have zagged before the president is your number one problem. It's just not. I don't care how you slice it or cut it. It's almost 100% the president is not actually your problem.
Yeah, exactly. Well, unless you like the president and then you start going like, well, he doesn't really have power. He's not doing that. But if you hate the president, you're like, oh, fuck the president. He's ruining everything.
Exactly.
And it's like you'll so conveniently just change how the executive branch works, for what you love.
And I still never forget that Jay Whitecotton, he had such a great, I can't describe it as a bit, but he just had this line where he's talking about how and I think it comes from that punk rock mentality too, where he's like, it's like the president is like the principal of a high school. He goes, how weird would it be if you went to a friend's house in high school and he had a picture of the president of the school on his wall? You'd be like, you fucking nerd. You know what I mean? Like, you think this guy cares about you?
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, I thought that was such a beautiful way to describe how people treat the president. You know what I mean? It's like if you were like, no, I think our principal is fucking awesome. You're like, why are you yelling at everybody?
Oh, that's such a great bit. Or like, or like if your current boss, like if you had a framed picture of him in your house, it's like, what? It's like, this is
that would be so weird.
This is Mr. Smith. He's incredible, dude.
Yeah, we love him. We love him.
He gives me money. He gives me time off. It's fantastic. Oh man! Speaking of weird stuff, dude, your new podcast, Oddball History Podcast with Jimmy Nelson, Scott Crisp.
Have you listened to it?
Yeah. I think my favorite one so far. Well, I knew about the marathon one.
Okay,
that one, and I loved listening to it still because it's like every time that article will cycle through because I like running so much now that it'll cycle through my feed every now and then. And it still blows my mind away every time I hear it told again. You know, about just how, because it was 1904, right?
Yeah, everybody's dying in like the weirdest ways. Dude. They're passing out in apple orchards. Some dude is trying to cheat by riding in the back of a truck. And
yeah. And it's like somebody was chased by wolves or dogs. Or
Stray dogs.
Yeah. And you're just like, the fuck? And then there was some kind of purposeful dehydration or something that they were
Oh
doing.
yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
No.
They
Listen,
were feeding him rat poison. They were feeding one of the runners like
right.
a little, like they were just like somehow
like microdosing rat poison.
Yeah, they thought, and he ended up winning, but they had to carry him across the finish line.
Oh
like
my God!
So the podcast is called All Ball History, and we just every week we pick a different topic, and I enjoy it because we have a group text, and we will pick a topic. We'll agree on a topic, and then everybody researches it individually. So when we show up to record, we all have like a different kind of narrative.
Oh, so you all know a little bit about the topic, but you haven't discussed like, here's how we're going to go through it.
Yeah,
that's fun.
So we show up, and then everybody kind of has their own version, and it's grown and morphed and changed as we've done it. But it's like, and I think everybody's kind of found their role. Mm-hmm. I sidetrack everybody, like oh, we're running in a marathon. I'm like, I used to know a guy that ran a crack house, and it's like, and then Jimmy kind of keeps everybody on track, and then Scott, I feel like, is always the ringer.
Scott cracks me up because he's just
he's funnier than all of us.
No,
Scott,
I wasn't going to say that.
Scott is the funniest.
Well, I forget how deep his knowledge is of like TV and movie pop culture.
It doesn't make any sense. Like he can tell you, like I think he could tell you every Family Matters episodes, like a synopsis of it, and
he's not trying to be funny. He's just like he knows the knowledge and he wants to share it.
Yeah, I've never really watched The Simpsons, but I feel like I've seen every episode.
They just put it on I don't know, one of the streaming platforms, and so I was like, I'm gonna start season 1, episode 1, and start going through it. And there's weird stuff. Like I didn't realize the very first Simpsons episode was a Christmas special.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because, when you watch them when they just come on TV, like when we're growing up, it's like they just randomly come up. So you're like, oh, it's a Christmas special. But yeah, the very first episode was a Christmas special. And I was like, I don't think that's ever been done.
I love the Treehouse of Horrors because I love horror stuff and scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I was never like, some things like if there's like 19 seasons and I haven't seen any of them, I'm like, I miss that. I just miss that. You know what I mean? Like that's just gonna be.
We grew up being told you can't watch it. So
oh, really? You grew up in one of those kind of houses?
Yeah. So it made it really enticing. So when we were able to start watching it, it's like, oh, this is incredible.
Oh man, dude, I had like this RCA Winnebago TV in my room, like wood paneled. And I wasn't like monitored at all as a child.
Yeah, I remember you saying your childhood was a little loose.
Yeah, very, very about as loose as you can get. I'm in there like I joking on stage recently. Like when I'm on the road, like typically when I'm in town, I don't really do much dirty stuff. But for some reason, when I'm on the road, you feel like there's like this looseness to like who you're allowed to be and also when I'm on the road a lot, it's like you're in like these smaller cities. You know what I mean? And I'll do stuff talking about like that TV, like how you couldn't like. I always talk about how like when I was a kid, like you if you didn't pay for HBO, you couldn't see it, but you could hear it. All right, so like you couldn't see the taxi cab confessions, but you could hear them. And I was like, I think that's why to this day I still like dirty talk. You know what I mean? Like you're so influenced by these things, and I love all that stuff, man. But like TV to me, when I was a kid, I spent most of my time watching Comedy Central 30-minute specials. I think, and I missed those 30-minute specials. We didn't have cable
because we grew up in a really small town.
Oh, where'd you grow up?
So, do you know where like Nevada and Farmersville and Copeville and those areas are?
No one's ever heard of them.
Yeah. They're popping now. Like people are doing housing developments and stuff out there. But funny enough, the way I always describe it is, it wasn't like a small country town. It was like a lake trash meth town.
Okay, yeah.
Because we grew up next to Lake Lavon, and it was like you're in the small town, but for some reason everybody's still on like lots. Like your neighbor's still right next to you.
Okay, so that's not that far away.
Here's a house, here's a trailer, here's a house, here's a trailer, that kind of setup.
Because I grew up going to Lake Lavon.
Yeah, so we were on the like far northeast side of it.
Okay,
and yeah, like so I don't think they actually ran cable out there for like a very long time.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I think our options were like regular TV or satellite, and I don't think our parents were willing to pay for satellite.
Yeah.
So yeah, we didn't have any cable stuff, nothing like that. That's why things like Simpsons were such a big deal. It's like a main channel, And
that's why I feel weird sometimes too as an individual, and I think it shows up in my comedy sometimes, or just who I am as a person, where it's like I remember whenever it sounds like it's something from like a different generation than mine. But I remember when I first got shipped from East Dallas to Plano. So this was like 6th, 7th grade, and I remember my grandpa would pick me up from school in a white Catalina, like where he still had the bubble wrap on the back seat, and we would. This was like every day, and we would drive to Lake Lavon. We'd fish for a couple hours. We'd catch a bunch of crappie. I'm driving in a car that has like the old dial radio. I'm listening to Jimi Hendrix on my headphones, and we're catching crappie. And then we would drive back to our house, and my grandmother would take that fish in the garage. She'd chop it up, she'd throw it in the fryer, and that was dinner.
There you go. Yeah, we lived at the end of a road that basically ran into a creek that was right on the lake. So if you look to the left, there's the lake. To the right, there's a creek. And so we would have around fishing season, there would always be issues. Like we'd come home and there'd just be like 10 cars parked at the end of the road, blocking our driveway where we couldn't get in.
Oh,
because they're all just walking down fishing. You know?
Yeah.
And we'd have to walk down in the creek and be like, "Hey, do you drive the truck? Do you drive this thing? Can you just move it? We're just trying to get in the driveway." You know?
Jesus Christ! Do you still like fishing?
Cool. No. My dad, man, he wants me to be into fishing so bad, and I just never. Like when I was young, I'd go with him, and we were kind of into it a little bit, you know. And I don't know, I just never got into it. I think my wife and my son are going to start fishing with my dad more than I would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because my wife really wants to do it, and my dad, like, I think she wants to go with him and go like deep sea fishing and do that kind of stuff.
See, I was never I enjoyed going with my grandpa because like he just told stories and like he was an interesting guy to be around, even when we were doing something that boring. But like he would take me hunting in Pittsburgh, Texas. Where he owned a little bit of land, and it was like I remember as a kid like hunting. Hey, I didn't really want to hurt animals.
Yeah,
and then also for the most part, like hunting is like you're just sitting in a deer blind for 6 hours with an old guy every once in a while going shh. You know, and I'm sure for him as you get older, I'm sure that's a much more enjoyable experience for him.
Yeah,
you know. But as a kid, it was like, oh my god, like I am losing my fucking mind in here. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like best case scenario, you get to shoot Bambi. You know, it's like this is not. There's no winning at this deer blind. You know,
I've never had an urge to hunt. You know, it's like when I was a kid, we had BB guns, and I think I shot a couple squirrels and birds, and you felt super bad about it.
That's who I am as a person too. Yeah. I don't like stepping on like if I can avoid killing anything, like I try to avoid doing it. Like I'll go eat a cheeseburger, but like I'm not part of this process.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's where I've landed on fishing is like. I wouldn't mind fishing for my food, but I have no desire to do like catch and release because I keep thinking about, I think there was like maybe a Futurama episode or something where it's like, I don't remember what it was, but basically it's like, you know, a fish coming out of water would be like if an alien pulled you out into space and you were choking for a little bit and then they unhooked it and threw it back.
Yeah, they just showed you to everybody and they just dropped you.
And like some show was talking about that. And ever since then, I can't get it out of my mind. And so it's like if I was doing it for food, you know, it's like you pull the fish up, whack it, and kill it. And, you know, it's like I would feel better about it. But I've never had the urge since then to just go like, oh, this is relaxing. I just want to go fish. And I get why people do. You know, I'm not knocking on your thing.
I feel like when you're fishing, you just want to get away from somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like the only...
We live near White Rock Lake, and it's like I have just as much fun like when I take my kid to the lake and we just point at the fish and point at the turtles, you know, and it's like, whoa, look at those. And so it's like I think I would prefer, like, rather than hunting, it's like, yeah, it'd be cool to go, like, hang out and be quiet and be like, holy cow, we saw this, we saw that, and we'll just take out the shooting part, you know?
Yeah, binoculars are maybe better than a gun.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
you know? And it's like, I love that aspect of it, and who doesn't love, you know, like, sitting around a campfire, drinking beer and hanging out and all this, you know, that's all great, but, yeah, I've never, ever thought, you know, like, let's go kill this sounds like fun. Yeah, and I grew up in a town where it's like that's what people love to do. Every year people would go on their hunting trips and stuff, and it's like just never got. And we grew up with guns. Like we had guns in the house. Same. We
had a gun. Like we had like one of the nicest pieces of furniture in the house was like a gun case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like so, it's like, but I was never that fascinated. I also think the first time I shot a shotgun, like it almost dislocated my shoulder because I was like 12. You know, and so after that, I was kind of like, well, this is why are you guys so into this? Is terrible. Yeah. This hurts a lot.
My wife's really wanting to get into something like that. Like she thought she wanted to get a gun for a moment, and she went and got her license. And I was like, listen, I don't want you having a gun in the house, you know, for the simple fact that like statistically, it's more likely you're going to shoot me than an intruder. And it's like right now we're recording this podcast at night. It's like I'm going to come home when she's asleep in bed after this podcast. You know, she gets scared very easily. Like she'll know I'm in the house and I'll just walk into the room that she's in and she's like, God damn it. And I'm like, how did I scare you when you knew I was here? And so the thought of like coming in at midnight or 1 a.m. and now she has a gun to be scared with.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Now
and
we're all nervous.
Yeah. And I was like, so I really need you to like, if you're going to get a gun, like I need you to go to a range and get training and like really know how to use this thing. Cause I'm kind of scared of that now.
Yeah.
And of you having a gun. And, but I think she's going to do archery. I think she's going to get into that. And I was like, okay, I can be down with archery.
Oh man, but it's also gonna suck so much worse to get shot with a bow and arrow than a gun. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like,
maybe I can dodge it a little. Like.
Yeah, maybe. You know, it's gonna be harder for her to get you.
Yeah.
But like, I'm also like, the guns are weird for me just because like I don't like the idea of like I've always had this thesis in my head about the idea of like, if you carry it, like I've had friends or family members where it's like, to me, the idea like if you carry a gun with you everywhere you go. You can't get around the fact that a little small part of you hopes you get to use it.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
just naturally, and that's not about guns. That's not about people. That's just who we are.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's like if you go buy an iPad, like you don't take it home and be like, you know, just in case. Like, no, you want to use it. You know what I mean? You want to use it.
Dude, even on a small level, I bought a dash cam for my truck, just something to record when I'm driving in case something were to happen. I've got footage of it. And it's like, I really don't even know why I bought it. I'm just paranoid. But I think like, oh, I'm going to get in a wreck and somebody's going to try to scam me and I'll have it. Right.
Yeah.
And even with that, I'm thinking like, well, if they do hit me, I've got the footage now. And it's like, it's almost like I wish I was getting into a wreck now because I can prove you did this and you caused this.
Or you get to catch somebody else getting in a wreck. You want something cool to happen, so you get to see it.
And it's like, if that happens with a dash cam, if you give me a gun in my truck, I know I'm going to want to pull it out.
Yes.
I know I'm going to want to.
And that's not me. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're a human being. Like,
guns are really fun.
Yeah.
And that would be a powerful way to show someone like, don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have enough minor road rage that I know like, I don't need one of these. That's not going to go the way I want it to.
It's like the idea. It's like, I think I grew up in a neighborhood where like you got your ass beat a lot, but like, you know, for the most part, like everybody, you got up the next day. You're okay.
Right.
You know, but there's so many, like growing up the way I grew up around drugs and violence, there were so many occasions where, you know, there were more instances where everything turned out better because nobody had a gun than, you know, things were good because somebody did have a gun. And I think people forget that quite a bit in the conversation.
When I remind myself, when I think about like, excuse me, do I need it? I start reminding myself, I'm like, you've made it this far in your life without ever needing one.
Yeah.
It's like, so, and then I just try to think about like, well, what are you doing to try to mitigate ever having to need one? And so, like Jim Jeffries has that phenomenal bit.
It's such a
about
good
gun
bit.
control.
I remember watching that years ago. Yeah,
and my favorite part in that bit is,
and I love when he talks about it now because he talks about how like, because man, I love that people love that bit, but I hate that I start selling more tickets every time that there's a tragedy because people find that bit. Like, I can tell how guns are going in the country, like how many massacres there have been based on like how well I'm selling tickets.
That's incredible. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
but I love the part he gets into about like. You know, it's for safety. And he's like, you know, he's like, bullshit. He's like, you know, if it was for safety, it's like, how come there's not magazines like Padlock Magazine, like Security System, you know, Weekly or whatever? How come there's not a guy on the cover of the magazine like showing off all his deadbolts on his door? You know, and it's like,
that's a great point.
It's a great point. It's like,
oh, well, we keep it in a gun safe. And it's like, well, then what? Then what are you going to do if somebody is actually robbing your house?
Hold on. Yeah, and it's like, look, I get pro gun people's arguments. I'm not trying to rain on your parade. But that's what's great about that bit. It's like, look, if you love guns, you still have to be able to listen to that and go like, yeah, he's got a couple good points there. Like, you know,
to me, that's comedy. Yeah. I always love the ideas. Like, I would love him to be doing that bit in a room full of people that are very pro gun and watching them laugh. Yeah. That's the point of comedy. It's like, laugh at yourself for a second.
Yeah.
Because none of our beliefs are really that important.
Yeah. I think that's why I've started to like Tim Dillon quite a bit.
Yeah.
And even Shane Gillis is like, depending on the clip that you pull of their work, you could paint them as like a conservative, a liberal. It's like you really have no idea what their viewpoints are because it's so, you know, it's the way everybody really is, which is it's really nuanced. It's like on this issue, you're conservative. On this issue, you're more liberal. And that's fine. And they poke fun at everything just so well. So it's like, depending on the clip you pull, it's like, oh, so he's like, this type of person, and then you watch the other one, it's like, oh, I thought he was that way. He's this way,
and that's so preferable.
Awesome.
But I get very like even the two people you mentioned. I struggled with this for a long time in comedy, like or not struggle with, but like I am envious at times that I feel like white guys, and like I'm not one of those people that likes to shit on white people, but like white comedians are allowed access to ambiguity that black and brown comedians do not get. Not to say that you can't be black or brown and be conservative, but when you walk on stage, the assumption is almost 90%, 99% going to be that you are liberal.
Yeah.
Whereas white guys get to play the line a lot more. They get to, you can kind of be like, oh, I thought he was this, or I thought he was that, because you don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he's wearing like a cowboy hat and boots, you know what I mean? Or he's wearing like a fuck the police shirt. Like they are allowed access to this ambiguity that black and brown comics don't get.
That's a good point. I would argue though that I think you're dead on. But I think then what makes it fun is you get guys like Brian Simpson, for instance, right? Black comic. And it's like, I think he's ex-military and he has some more conservative views on some things. So it gives you the chance to throw the curveball, right, if they do have those expectations. But, yeah, I get your point. Angela Owen was the guest on here before you, and I've been thinking a lot about the initial viewpoint because she was asking me, she's like, well, when I come on the stage, because I was telling her when she takes the stage, there's a different tone set immediately. And I like it because I like that, you know, she's worried that like, oh, I'm just this old woman doing comedy and people don't relate on these levels. I was like, I don't think that at all. I think when you come up, it's immediately a tone change, but in a good way, right? Where I'm not just looking at the same cookie cutter comic that's been coming up here, right? And that's fun.
It's not flannel and a beard.
Yeah. And she was asking me, she's like, well, when I come up, what's your first impression? What are you thinking immediately? And I was like, oh man, I haven't really thought a lot about first impressions of comics in a long time, where you do before you speak into the mic, I'm thinking it's probably going to be like this.
Yeah.
But you instantly go like, I bet they're going to talk about something like this.
And it's been a big part of like, because I think I speak through comedy a lot of times about like myself because it's such a reflection of, it's such a mirror for who you are as a person. I think if you're really expressing yourself in an honest way, but like I used to think so much about how I come off to people because it's always super fascinating whenever people come up to you after a show and they say something to you, like, and based on their comment, you could tell how you come off to them. And you're like, oh, okay. I mean, way off, but like I get it. You know what I mean?
What's the most common things you get?
Well, like some people will think that like you're, they'll either say something political to you, or they'll say like something like they think you're like more street than you are.
Okay.
Or they think that you're really smarter than you are. And it's just like, it's just like you can tell what their perception of you is. And it rarely aligns with who you are because people are duplicitous, like in a positive way. Like there's multifacets to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, like whenever you're at home with your kid being a dad and when you get in a road rage incident, or people think I'm more angry than I am a lot too. Like, cause like, I think I've realized something about comedy too. Is I remember when I was a kid, when I played football, cause like I grew up in like a violent environment. And I remember my grandfather, I think, noticed that in me and he got me playing football. And I remember him like telling me, he's like, this is the place you get to do that. And like, I think comedy is like, I'm not as angry as I think people think I am, but when I'm doing comedy, I am allowed to like, you know, so many things happen during the day where you're like, well, I can't react like that. You know, we got to keep it, you know, right here, even killed. But when I go up there and I touch the microphone and I start going, I am then allowed to like let it all out.
Yeah.
So I think some people are like, oh, he's really yelling at us and he's cussing at everybody and he's angry. But like, no, like I just wasn't allowed to do that this morning whenever this bullshit happened. And so now you guys get to have it, but it's coming out it's like football, you know, it's like, well, you know, I hit that guy really hard, but like we're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like with comedy, it's like, no, I'm expressing myself loudly and boldly because this is the place I'm allowed to do it. But when I get off stage, I'm not actually that upset about
usually.
things. Yeah, not usually.
I will say, man, like I've seen you multiple times at mostly non-shows, things that or not non-shows, but like open mic type environments, those things where you know, you'll have the heckler or the jerk and you get to just do your thing with them. And so part of me, every time I watch you, even though I want to see your material, I'm like, maybe I'll get to see him destroy someone today. Like,
and you know, there is a
and
part
I'd rather watch the show, but there is some. I'll never forget. There was a open mic or something. This was like before I started this podcast, when I was just thinking about it, and because I'd been listening to Kill Tony, and I didn't understand, like I knew what an open mic was for music, but I didn't really quite understand how it worked for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I keep seeing that Hyenas has this Wednesday thing. I'm going to go watch this, And some comic was trying to bit, it wasn't going well, and these people, he was trying to get somebody in the audience involved, it wasn't going well. They were talking shit to him, and it just, it dove. And they were being pricks. And then you came up and you said some things that just roasted them, and it was hilarious. And it was right, like you didn't even do your material, you just tore them apart, and you're like, all right, I'm out of here. And I was like, I love this. And I didn't even know you yet or your material, but that stood out. And then when I saw your material later, I was like, oh, that was that guy. That's great. Okay. And I always love a good, like I never want the show to have a heckler, but when I know there's somebody who can handle a heckler, I'm always like, maybe we'll have a good one today.
And you saying all that brings up so much stuff in me about like,
to be clear, don't heckle. Heckle's a shitty thing. Don't do it.
Oh, for sure.
Don't do it.
Heckling, there's so many. So whenever you mentioned me doing that at an open mic, and of course I don't remember the instance.
Yeah.
But it sounds like me back then. And whenever you got to be that good at the open mics, because it is a different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me like it fed the ego a lot, which created such a dangerous thing. Like not a dangerous thing if you're more mentally stable, which I wasn't at the time, but it's like to become like the king piece of shit at a piece of shit place. You know what I mean? Mm. And then everybody's
the
buying
king piece of shit
at a piece of shit place. Yeah.
There you go.
You know what I mean? If you're like the guy everybody knows at the dive bar, you probably should be home more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was that kind of situation. It doesn't mean I had to react to it that way. It's like, and it reminds me too, it's like, I will say that when I'm doing shows, if they're going like, the show can be going well, but like no magic's happened yet. No lightning has struck. There's no thunder. There's no, I'm not feeling like we're just building energy here. Like sometimes I almost wish somebody would yell some shit so I can just like bring the room back up by destroying them.
Yeah.
It's like throwing the ball back in the air. And I'm gonna say like, but it's weird now too, like letting all of that go. Like I haven't done open mics in like 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of don't need to anymore, do you? I mean, you're working enough now to where you can work your material into your sets and try it that way rather than at open mics, right?
Yeah, and it keeps the sets more interesting. But like there's like a tiny little part of me that just misses whenever it was fun. Mm. And whenever you say that, like I was so anyone who listens to this podcast probably, or Alvin and Laurent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I'm so happy with the class that I started with. And the other night I was doing DCC with Matthew Bessard, and Alvin and Laurent came out.
I forgot you were on that show, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you about that second. Go ahead.
And we just like, it's like there's always like these deaths for rebirth, and it's like I've come to this completely different side of who I am as a person in a lot of ways. But like that night, just like, because I normally now I'm kind of for like where I'm at in my life, where it's like I come in, like I care about comedy a lot. I come in, do the set, I want everything to go well, and then everybody comes out. I feel like more proud. I feel like it's like, I used to avoid it sometimes, but now I feel like it's my job to go stand out there and say thank you for coming. Maybe somebody wants to sign up on Instagram, be a professional, and then I try to get out of there, just not be there. Mm-hmm. And but Alvin and Laurent came out, and we were just sitting there, and it just felt like when I first started. Mm. Like we closed the place down. Like we were there till 2 a.m, just sitting on one of those little benches outside, just talking. And now all three of us are dads. Like we all started together 8 years ago. Nobody was a dad, So it's like there's been like this. It makes me a little wistful, whenever I hear about that. But like then I roll into an open mic maybe once or twice the last 2 years, not because to do a set, really, just because I felt lonely, And then being there, they're like, "Hey, you want to go up?" And me looking around the room, and be like, "No, no, I'm good."
It's like when you
not because I'm above it, but I'm like, this isn't going to help me in any shape or fashion, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's for, right? Is people are there working out stuff, trying to get better. And then when you hit a certain point, you don't really need to do that anymore. You just need to do shows. Mm-hmm. It's like you're better off doing a showcase than you are an open mic.
Oh, for sure. And like certain low, like whenever you have a show that's like a low risk kind of show, like that's where you're like, oh, I'm going to really work on some stuff here right now. And it creates more bravery in you, where like sometimes, like I had a weekend, like there's been all this growth for me. Like I went through this 2-year period of me trying to sounds shitty, but I did go through this 2-year period like where I want to be a headliner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to a place where I felt like I was worthy of being close to being that. So it was like being on the road all the time and like trying to do dog tags. Like, you know, like in a war movie when someone dies and you take the dog tags. Like I was going around the country and I wanted to do so much better than the headliner that whenever I left on Sunday, I felt like I had his dog tags in my pocket. Like that's like that. That's like that more competitive nature than I like to like let out.
You know what though?
That's in my head.
There's a comic that we both know that I heard them give that same advice to a couple other comics. And this comic is able, I'll tell you afterwards, they're able to give that advice. But they were like, if you go on a show, they're like fucking destroy. They're like, make them earn it if they want to be better than you. And it's like, and so like, maybe that's not horrible.
No, it's like to be. It's like we're not all Michael Jordan, but it's like you get like I think if you really excel at things, for the most part, you have some of this like super competitive nature in you. Like I'm not going to trip you on the way to the stage, but I want to destroy you.
Yeah, yeah.
I want the show to seem stupid after I'm done.
I think that that's how everything should be. And again, like I'm still learning a lot, but you know, I hear a lot about kind of the formula of how some places like to work. You know, the idea is you're setting everything up for this headliner to have a great show. And that's great, you know, if that's the way you want to do it. But part of me thinks, you know, no, everyone should be as funny as they could possibly be. And that headliner should be able to hang because they're a headliner. Mm-hmm. And everybody will benefit from that kind of like, you know, shark circling mentality of like, hey, man, you better be funny because I'm going to be funny.
So I've gone through now the phase has changed a little bit because like I went through it and it's like, and I was doing that and I was feeling success at it. But like, so you're talking about like, you should kill. So here's where you get in the trap with it. It's like if every show you're trying to do that, it will, I realized it's good to have that competitive nature in you, but it will start inhibiting your growth because instead of trying to be the best version of yourself, which is going to require taking some L's. It's going to require taking some losses because you're trying out different stuff and you're trying out different things because you're not going to.
So you end up leaning on your strong material.
Yeah. You're leaning in because you want to get the win because you just want to win. And sometimes you have to allow yourself not to lose, but to open up more of the opportunity for loss. So, and it was just happenstance. I was working Plano House Comedy recently and the headliner was super funny, but just the way that room works. Like it's harder to like watch the headliner if you want to talk to the MC after the set. And so in my head, I was like, you know, I'm just going to, I would just watch the end of the sets. But that was the first weekend I finally realized like, oh, no, you need to start competing against you. I want to take my own dog tag.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the weekend. I want to get in the car and go like, oh, I was totally better than I was 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Or I figured out this or I learned this and it's not about me competing with this person. And then I started doing that for a few weekends. And then I did that a show recently last weekend. It doesn't matter who it was, but like I got my feelings hurt a little bit just because like I had one of those sets where as soon as I got off stage, I was like, oh, nobody's following that. I don't care who's here in this room tonight. Like nobody's following. Like it's just an energy thing. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes you build up so much energy and it's just full throttle for so long that by the time you get off, you're like, I mean, maybe, but I think just an audience can only sustain for so long being like this high. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be a natural dip because everything was just hitting so hard. And then I felt good about myself and it wasn't, I moved past trying to like compete against this headliner. And then after the show was over, you know, I'm having a drink with the staff and I remember he comes over to me and he was like, hey, man, well, I guess it's one of those nights the feature should have been in the headliner, huh? And I was like, oh, no, man, like, you know, you did great. And he goes, yeah, you know, I was like, I know I was doing dark stuff. Or like I tried to flip my script a little bit. And he was like, oh, yeah, you know, and that's fine to do when it's your show, you know? And like, and it hurt my feelings just because it was like, I've headlined shows, a bunch of shows, you know, and I've even recently I was in a situation where I was working Playhouse Comedy and I was featuring, and the MC is somebody who'd been doing it for 20 years. And they're really good. And I remember there was one show where the MC was killing this room so hard that right before he brought me up, he goes, "Oh man, if you guys think the show's good now, wait till you see this next guy. You guys have no idea." And he only said that on the show where he was murdering. And in my head, I literally did this. I was like, "Oh, that's a dirty trick," and I love it. And I went up there, and 5 minutes in, it was clear. It was clear that I was doomed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't bombing, but there was a clear dip in how the show was going. And when I got off stage, I didn't go to him and go like, "Oh, you fight." Like in my head, I was like, "Dude, way to go!" Like, that was a dirty trick. I've done dirty tricks before, you know. And I know it's because you've been doing it for 20 years, and like there was probably a little bit of ego in the fact that I'm coming up next and following you. And maybe I don't know. I don't think I would have done that dirty trick. But I also know that as the headliner, if that happens to me, I'm not going to go back to the MC or the feature and be like, "Well, it was kind of a, you know, I guess it's all about you, huh?" You know what I mean? Like, that's you just kind of fucking take your L and you go work on yourself.
Exactly.
But you don't try to ruin somebody else's night if they had a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, you know, as somebody in the crowd watching, it's like I'd rather like that headliner perform the set that they were going to perform anyway. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I got what I was going to get. And it's like, I would rather have a great feature, even if it dropped a little bit of the energy off the headliner, than to have a watered down feature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm still going to get the headliner set for what it is. Mm-hmm. I'm still going to get that. And if you're a headliner, it's like, you should be able to hang. You should be able to do it.
For sure.
You're going to be fine.
For sure.
You know?
And you don't get that. You don't get to be there without being somebody that can hang. And you always know with comedy, there's like always another night. There's always another night, unless you like pull a Kramer. You know, like there's always another night. You know, so like, and you also know how it is. But I caught myself. I just performed with the SNL guy, Marcelo Hernandez. We did 4 sold out shows last weekend, and it felt good to also like comedy. It's always evolving. There's always like all these nuanced things. But I was like, he's on Saturday Night Live. Every show is sold out. And I was like, okay, we're not taking dog tags from him, and we're not taking dog tags from ourselves. Like, we're just gonna go up there and like this is the time to present where we're at. Mm-hmm. And I had to make some edits, and I had to call some audibles, and I had to make some adjustments after the first show because it was an all Latino crowd mostly, which for me is like scary. I get nervous around. And as I told them, it's not just the knives, but I just feel like I don't fit in here.
Yeah, well, you feel like an American Latino, not a Latino, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're here for the real thing. And it was like I had to make adjustments, but I also realized that it wasn't really the time for me to be. I'm in the middle. I'm just going to do 7 that like I've just never tried before. Just see what happens. Right. Like it wasn't that environment. So like no matter what your morals or where you're at with comedy or what you're trying to do or what your stance is, like you have to let it ebb and flow a little bit.
Yeah, I love watching it so much. And it's like I was worried I was going to stop liking it, going to more shows and talking to you guys and diving deeper in it. And it's just made me like it more, you know, the nuance of it all. And just it's so strange what hits with people and what doesn't.
Yes.
And then just how like, you know, tonight that joke kills and tomorrow everyone hates you.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. It's like, you know, I've been in a position where I've got to watch someone do, you know, like a Saturday, you know, 2 shows in a row, and I'll watch both shows, right? And you're just like, man, the first show just reacted totally different than the second show. And there's really no reason why that should happen. You know, the material was pretty much the same. And it's just the energy that comes in and out of those rooms is so fascinating. It's like you wish there were like colleges studying, you know, I don't even know what you would call it, but, you know, just the, you know, like, oh, I study vibes. Like,
yeah. Well, there's so much psychology to it. There's so much mental health psychology to like what's going on in the room. But I think I've learned with comedy too, is like the energy always changes in the room. And, you know, sometimes there's this many people there, there's that many people there, and that changes everything, or just what's going on, what time the show is at. The early show is going to be different than the late show just because they're different.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's what you learn about in comedy and watching like super really good headliners is I realized this early on, which is like, no matter what the room, what's going on in the room, it's not about like your ceiling has to be high. Your ability has to be like your ability to crush has to be up here for you to be a really good headliner. But what you have to do, what I've noticed with comedy or any comic at any level, even if you want to go from MC to feature or open micer to MC, it's like you got to keep your ceiling high, but what you got to really focus on is hiring up your floor. Right?
That's a good way to look
because
at it.
like I remember like working with guys like Mark Norman. When you watch a guy like Mark Norman, it's like he might not always get here, but God damn it, he's coming in about right here.
Yeah, he's never dropping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I remember there was a time when I was like first starting a feature where it's like, I was like here and here. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, as this, like, this is going up, but this has to come up even higher for you to be somebody where you're not getting beat all the time.
Yeah.
You know? And that's how I think you become elite, is not by, like, of course the ceiling's going to go up, but you got to get your floor up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that applies to everything in life.
Yeah. Well, where now that you're here, where do you think it's at now in terms of the ceiling and the floor?
I think they're pretty close.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is the next step then? Like, what's the new goal now that you're this far in?
Oh man, that's a good question. So,
because at this point you're headlining and featuring, depending on the weekend, right? And then you're getting out of the state pretty often.
Yeah.
Right. You travel. You're on the road. You work here a lot. So, like, where do you see it going now?
So, man, I've been lucky the last 2 months. Like, I've been working a lot. I was just in Kansas, and Kansas is ending. I was there for like their second to last weekend.
Is that which club was that?
The Looney Bin.
Is that the one that had the owner they passed away?
Yeah, he passed
That's
away.
right.
So
Okay.
then there's all these things changed. So it's like,
So nobody's going to be able to salvage that club up there. Nobody's buying it.
no, I think Randy Butler's going to buy it.
That's the guy who owns Hyenas. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that'd be cool if it happens. I mean, and I say it like it's a secret. Like, he posted that on Facebook.
Okay.
But like, and he texted me about it, and I'm really hoping. Like, I was trying to get the manager that ran the Looney Bin in touch with Randy, so like he can become. And like, I would love that because he deserves the job. And he's an amazing guy. And yeah, I've had all these shows the last 2 months, and I've had all this growth. I feel like recently, and but so the next goal. And I guess I can say it. I've been trying to hold on to it. It's like, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm committed to the idea that in the next 2 to 3 months, I got to record something and it's got to get put out. I've got to let 40, I think now at this point, I think I got to let 45 minutes of this material go.
Really?
I've lived with it for so long.
Yeah.
And I think for me to really take the next step, like I said, with comedy, my room's this dirty head where I think I've got about an hour and a half plus that I can just get out of the floor and just start throwing. But I forget things. I forget stories. And then all of a sudden they'll pop back up. I'm like, oh, yeah, that story. And then I go up there and it goes really well for 10 minutes. And then I kind of live with that for a while. So it's like, I've got to record something. We're going to put it out. And then I feel very confident that the next 40 is just right around the corner.
That is a good way to approach it, because it's like you don't want that material to just drift away into nothing either.
Yeah.
Right? Like if like you said, if you're starting to forget things, it's like, hold on. Before we do that, it's like, let's get that stuff as perfect as you can, record it. That way it's there. It's done. And let's put it aside and then work on the new stuff, rather than it just go like, oh yeah, I did used to tell a joke about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, well, I love talking to you about the lengths of, like we've had talks before about how long comedy should be and how long recorded things should be. And, you've got your own views on that, and I like them. But if you got 45 minutes, do you want to do that as one chunk of 45, or would you want to do it as like a 20 and a 25, or like how would you like to record it?
So I was thinking a lot about it the last few days, and I here's a few of the problems and maybe some solutions where it's like, so for the recording of the album, I think I want to video record it and audio record it. Is 30, I think putting out a half hour, I think is what I want to do. The shows will probably be 45, but just release the 30. But so what do you think about this? So it's like, I was thinking about this a lot, where it's like Hyenas would be like the natural place for me to do it. But I don't, the lighting in both of those clubs is not conducive. Like, it doesn't look great.
I like Hyenas. I
love Hyenas. That's my home club.
We live like less than a mile from the Dallas one. That was one of the first, I think that was the first like club show I ever went to. It's always going to have a place in my heart. That being said, it's like you criticize the ones you love, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like their lighting. I think it's very harsh. Like, everything just seems very whitewashed. And then I think that room's just very echoey. And I know why clubs do it. I know clubs want to like amplify laughter, like to the audience perspective. But I really do wish clubs would treat their room a little bit more and take some of that echo. Because what ends up happening to me is your voice on stage ends up getting washed out in these echoes on like your small moments. And you're one of those comics where you'll dip down to a quieter thing and you'll just talk to people like this for a minute. And I feel like in those echoey clubs, a lot of times it makes it easier to be like, what did he say? What was that?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I don't like about that club in terms of recording. And, you know, if they do happen to listen to this, it's like, man, you could do small stuff like panels on the walls and things that would help all of that. And then in terms of the lighting, it's like, you know, I think that lighting is great when you're there in person watching. It's just hard. It needs to be softer, I think, for a camera, right? Like whenever you put a phone on it or a regular camera on it, it's just very harsh on the comic. And so that's a hard thing is because, like, you open the club for the live show. And the lighting's fine for that, right?
No, that's what I was going to say. Highness is great. Like for the live show, it's great. It just as soon as you put a camera on it, though, like the light with the backdrop washes everything out. It creates like because Highness is my favorite. Fort Worth is my favorite place to play. But the lighting in that room, even it's like it just washes everything out.
Even the red room is a better option, just because something about that light in that room makes it softer all around, and you break out like it's easier to separate you from that curtain, I think. But I like all those rooms. Like, I mean, in terms of the actual show and performance, I think it'd go well at that spot.
And see that I thought the red room too. Like I thought the red room would be a good place just because I like the size of it.
Yeah.
But once again, I want to video it and put it on YouTube. So I don't like the idea of like how it looks necessarily.
I know what you mean.
For a special.
I know what you mean.
So here's the problem. Is if I'm doing it in those environments, or I could like, I thought about Linda, you know, who I love so much, Backdoor Comedy, but that room is so, I could change the backdrop, but like that room is so, I don't feel as loose in that room. I love that room, and I love that room. So
you feel the loosest on the Fort Worth stage, probably, right?
Yeah, and I love Backdoor. It's great. It's a material room. It's like you go up there, you do your clean set, you deliver material, and it's perfect for that. Mm-hmm. But I want to be a little looser when I'm up there. And then there is, you know, I could do like the small room at DCC, and that might be an option.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about the small room at DCC is the air conditioner kicks on really loud.
Oh, really? See, and I love that you said that.
It comes on, it's like it's super loud. But I do like DCC a lot. DCC is another one. Again, I love all the clubs here. I got no hate on any of the clubs. But it's another one, like that's an echoey room.
Very echoey.
And I know that probably benefits improv really well because they're up there with no mics shouting, and it's probably very conducive to improv. And I know that main room, that stage is definitely built as a hybrid improv stand-up comedy stage. That's why it's so wide and narrow. But it's like I do think a little bit of sound treatment would go a long way, and even just for live shows. But I don't know. I think about that a lot. I want to record a lot of comics. Like I don't do great video work, but I know people that do.
Same.
And
same.
I can do audio very well. And I think a lot about like, it's not about like which room is the best to record in. It's like which room matches that person the best.
Yes.
You know, like when they look at it, they're like, I'm so glad I did it there. I fucking love that place or whatever it is.
And I think we should do this together. I would love to have you on to do the audio recording and help me produce it. Yeah?
Yeah. I'll help
you do a great job with this stuff.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll help you out with it.
So here's my other dilemma. So if I don't do it at Hyenas or one of these places where, because I want to be mostly performing for sure. Like, I mean, if I'm recording a special and an album, like, I'm going to have friends and family come out, you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
But like if I could find like a perfect space for us to record it in that's outside of the club environment and have it decorated the way I want to decorate it, then I'm relying really heavily on people I already know to come to the show.
Yeah.
Right? And
well,
and that is not like I want to do this for strangers.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's tough. I've been to shows where people have a lot of people that they know in the audience, and it's a different crowd. And they're supportive, but it doesn't get that shock and awe that your material lends itself so well to. Mm-hmm. So, but you can get a blend of the people you know, blend of the people that you don't know. It would probably come down to just making sure you book it well to where you're supporting comics that are opening and featuring or helping to bring out crowds that maybe don't know you.
Yeah.
That would be... Do you even know places that you like that aren't traditional venues?
No, but I thought about like, I can just go around and scope some places out, like try to look for some cool rooms. And I think if you promise any bar, like, hey, on a Sunday or Tuesday or on like a Tuesday night, we can sell this place out.
Yeah.
They're going to be happy to let you come in and fuck with a place like at least a backdrop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do remember talking to you a long time ago about how we both loved the way, I always pronounce it wrong. Is it Jared or Gerard Carmichael?
Yes.
His special, is it 8?
Yeah.
That Bo Burnham film or produced. And I go back and watch that every now and then, and it's done so well.
It's so quiet.
I ended up reading articles about it because I was kind of fascinated with it because I was like, I don't know why I both like it, but I'm really bothered by it. I like it, but I felt like, is that as good as it was supposed to be? And I'm prefacing it that way, like hang in there, because then when I read articles, it's like him and I guess Bo Burnham had conversations about cinematically how to shoot it, because the average comedy special is just shot a very particular way. Right? Coming to the stage, Lawrence Rosales, and then it's you coming out waving, whatever, and then you tell your jokes. It's like, okay, we got a wide shot camera, we got a couple close-up cameras, maybe a back one that shows the crowd, go to the audience for this laughter. Whereas it was more cinematic in terms of like it doesn't open with him being introduced. It opens with it like tightly zoomed in on his face. He's not saying much, and he immediately is going into like some uncomfortable comment about, like, I think his opening line is something like, "Are we going to be okay? Like, are we going to be all right?" It's something like that. And these other people who were kind of writing these articles about it, they were explaining like, that was kind of the brilliance of it is cinematically it's as uncomfortable as the material is, and then when it gets to funny parts, it's kind of more traditional, and then when it gets to heavier parts, it's more okay. We're back to like we're watching a drama in a sense. And I was like, that's really fascinating, and it's lots of awkward close-ups and stuff that you don't really do, and it gets you thinking about like, man, how many different ways can you film comedy specials now to where it just matches the personality, right? Because like you wouldn't want to do, Bert Kreischer that way, right? It wouldn't work. But I loved it. So I think that's the trick, is you're just gonna have to find a space where you're like, this is it. I like this. I
want it to feel DIY. I want it to feel like I like the traditional sense. Like I like the Dave Attell's of the world. My stuff is my stuff's not dirty, but it is very underbelly. There is the punk, I think, in it, and there is the undercurrent of like the outsiders in it. Yeah. And so I want something that I think that kind of reflects that, but also keeping the tradition, because I grew up with the tradition of comedy. I like traditional stuff. But I think I would love to have a place where it's like, I don't mind it being shot like in the classical kind of way, but I would like something interesting as a backdrop. I would like an interesting kind of environment for what's happening, something that helps it stand out just a little bit. So whatever anyone else,
you'll just have to think about your material then, and think about like, like what are the themes of your material, and what are those people? Have you ever heard of those people when they look at numbers and things, they actually see colors?
Oh, really?
I'll have to look it up. It's an actual condition. Like there's some people, the way their brains are wired, it's like when they see people, words, numbers, they actually visually see colors. So they'll associate like the number 3 with red or something like that. So in a sense, you kind of have to think about your material that way of like, okay, like you're using terms like kind of dingy, DIY, and it's like you got to think like, what is that theme? And, how am I going to present and package all of this? Because that'll end up being all the ways you promote it as well, right? And like, have you thought of, since you're talking about more DIY and have you thought about when you started out the places that were like that weren't clubs yet that you loved the most? Do you have any good memories of like, oh, when I was starting out, I did this or that, or
Yeah, some very vivid memories of just like awkward places to be doing comedy in the first place. But like, I like the idea of like a dive bar.
I was going to say maybe you could mimic stuff like that, and then because then you have a little bit of a story to talk about that 45 minutes and how those things were created to get to this point, and like basically what you're telling me earlier about how you want to, kind of like put a bow on it and say this is complete. That you're telling that story, like this version of your material is going to represent this era of your comedy life. So how do you want? And then no matter what you do to it, 10 years from now, you'd be like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. But it's like, that's fine. That was you at this moment. How do we want to present it right now? You know? And just accepting like, warts and all. That's the way we did it, and I'm happy with it. So I don't know. It's interesting, but it's something that like you just have to go like, I like that. It's like people just going, I like the color blue. Like
I
whatever
want it
that may
to be. I'm struggling with the idea, and like I know I have to be aware because it's like this idea of like I want it to be perfect, and I want it to be this, and I want it to be that. But there's also this other aching thing in me to like be like I also just want to let it go.
Yeah.
I want to let this thing I worked on for 8 years, and it's not done, because now there's all this other material. But a lot of this shit, it's been recirculating for 8 years. Like I'm so ready to package it and present it and go.
Well, I think
this is what I did.
I think when you decide how you want to record it, you just go, okay. Well, we're in the zone of this material right now. Make it perfect because we're doing this, and then like it's almost like you're saying like I'm going to make it as perfect as I can because I'm never going to see it again after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing that like as perfect as it's going to be. It won't be, and just go with the flow on some of it, and that because that's all it'll ever be, right? It's like everybody who's ever recorded anything has always wished they could have changed a couple things about it,
And I was talking to myself about it the other night, where it's like the idea of like work on it, like sit down and write it all out again, refine it as best you can, and then also like don't be too stressed out because no matter what you're going to hate part of it.
Yeah,
when it's done,
absolutely.
And there's a freedom in that of knowing like it's obviously no matter what I do, when it's done and finished, I'm not going to be like that's 100% perfect. You're welcome, world. You know what I mean? Like,
nor should it be, right? Because this is the initial part of your comedy life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like it needs to be out there, and more comics need to do it too.
No, I disagree with that.
Well, what I mean is, I think there are a lot of good comics, especially here locally. There's a couple good comics who are not doing that, and again, some of that really great material that they have, it's either going to fade away or it's kind of irrelevant now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's like you missed that opportunity to like get it out there and let it live. It's not even about like, oh, this will be great and help sell more tickets and get me more popular. It's like, no, like you deserve to have it. It's like, you've played in bands. It's like, did you ever get to record any of that music?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't want to listen to that music now, but you're really happy that you recorded it.
No, for sure.
You're like, I did it. I got it.
I think that's the separation in comedy. It's like release your clips, put that stuff out, but like let's not call it an album or a special until like it is.
Right. I got you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like I've loved, like I'll talk a little shit. Like I've loved seeing the scene, like so many comics in the scene release their albums.
Yeah.
And some of them very well deserved. Way to go. Some of it, this was not ready. It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And it just became normalized.
I think some of it are just people thinking like, I got to crank this stuff out to become more popular and have content. And it's like, well, I mean, it's give and take. It's like, it still needs to be good. Don't rush it. And then I think other people want to produce a lot of these albums, so they just have people chirping in their ears like, I need another one. I need to do another one.
Yeah,
I need to release more and more and more because I'm building my brand and I'm building my thing.
It became their brand, and then you're putting other people in negative situations because the world shouldn't have seen this yet, and now it's available. And if you're posting clips, I think that's a different thing. But if you're going to call it a special, like there's some people that put them out, like Alvin. Alvin put one out like, we've been doing it 8 years. He's definitely ready to put something out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I've been doing it 8 years, but like I like the idea of like going a little bit further than you should have been to get it right.
Yeah. But talking about like your shorter things, like you were talking about 20, 30 minutes. Well, like your podcast, it's like guys like Scott and Jimmy. Mm-hmm. There's no reason if they wanted to buckle down and make, like this is the 20 minutes I'm prepared to get rid of. They'd have a really great 20 minutes.
Yeah, of course.
They've got the material.
Of course.
It's just whether or not they're ready to do it. Those are the people I think where it's like, man, before that stuff, it's like, I don't want to tell any of his jokes here, obviously, but like Scott's got a couple jokes that he's known for. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, man, like keep writing, get some material, but like I would love to record that so that it's there before you stop telling it because they're great right now. And it's like, like he's got that great Forrest Gump bit. And it's like, believe it or not, that's generational. It's like another generation's coming up. This may not hit with that group who didn't grow up with Forrest Gump like we did.
And the Forrest Gump bit, I still argue all the time. I think it's the best bit in the city.
And so it's like those types of things. It's like, I think that's what I'd like to do is help people go like, if you're ready, let's do it. Cause like I talked to another comic about it. I'm trying to think if I want to say their name. I don't think so. They were extremely nice. They just politely declined. But this was like when I first started the podcast, I saw them do a set, and they had this material about their family, and it was dark and it was edgy, but it was like very loving. You know, like it came all from a good place. And I hit them up and I was like, I think that would be really great to record as just like a 15-minute thing, and you can put it out however you want. And they were reasonable. They're like, I don't know if I want to record anything. You know, it's like, I don't want to get weirded out about like ownership and that type of stuff. And it's like, that's fine, no pressure. But then part of me is like, I wish I would have pushed them a little bit, because that person's not really performing a lot anymore. And it's like, it would have been so great. Like, they would have loved just having that recorded.
Yeah.
They would have loved having it.
And hopefully they did, like in their pocket with like the audio recording.
I hope so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but something like really good. You know? Anyway, but I think there's a lot of that. And then I think if you did really good ones, really picked what's getting recorded, what's getting released, that it would motivate people to go like, fuck, I want to do that. I gotta get better. You know?
And that's my thing, is like, get better, but like, don't feel like you have to release something because there's an avenue to release it.
No.
You know, because then I think it's just putting people in awkward situations.
Go the Tarantino route where you're like, I'm only doing this many.
Yeah.
I'm only doing this many. I want them all to be great, you know?
Because I think you can have a new 30 every year. I think if you're a comic who's working a lot and you're open to exploring yourself and you're putting pen to paper, it's easy to have a 30 every year. So if you have a 30 every year and people come out to see you, and even if you're headlining, well, I'll play you, you know, there's going to be maybe 5 minutes of just natural, you know, the way I am, there's going to be at least 5 minutes of stuff where it's just like, that just happened that night. That just happened at that show. And then, you know, I've got 10 of the stuff that you loved, and that's why you're here. And then 30 of stuff you've never heard before. Yeah. You know, so like, to me, that seems like an easy formula.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's time to do it.
That's exciting.
No, I'm excited about it too.
We'll talk about it afterwards. We'll figure something out. But and I don't know that. Well, we'll talk about it afterwards. But anyway,
well, I made it a resolution. Like the next 3 months, it's happening.
Okay,
and I've had that in my one of my journals for a couple of weeks, and you're the first person I told it to.
Okay,
because like I just wanted to honored. I wanted to keep it, you know, not a secret, but like I'm ready to do it.
It's good to put it out there too, because it puts a little pressure on you.
Oh, for sure.
Like I said, I'm going to do it. You know,
I said I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And I definitely live in a world now where it's like I try to best as I can live up to what I say I'm going to do. Yeah. And it's time to do it. I'm tired. I think this stuff is it's where it's at.
I'm getting excited already. I'm like, all right. Where do we? What kind of mics do I want to bring?
So, and then this week, you know, Wednesday I headline in Tulsa, and then I'm there all weekend. So, you know, I'm going to be locked in a hotel room. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity for me to sit down and start write everything out again I've ever had, and then start trying to refine a little bit, instead of just going up there and being like, I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like it's time to start. Okay, I think this is what the narrative is. I think this is what the through line is going to be, and then that'll lead me to where it's going to go.
Well, I think you'll be surprised too. Just it's so beneficial to release those types of things. It's like, I don't think you'll release the first one and then all of a sudden you'll have 30 million views on it.
Oh, for sure.
But I do think you will have this steady flow. It's like Jim Jeffries was saying, it's like he keeps getting these pumps of tickets. And it's like, even with this podcast, it's like, it's crazy. Like when you guys are doing things out there, like I can tell who is actively performing or doing something because those episodes then start getting downloads again.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean?
Oh, that's funny.
And that's what'll happen when you release something like that. It's like, you know, people just be like, I like that guy. I'm going to follow him. Oh, he has this thing. I'll watch it. Oh, I sent it to my friend. He's really funny. And it just, you know, it keeps going. It's like that nice build of just consistency.
And I can't wait to just be in a position to be on stage and like, you know, have a set where you're killing it. And at the end be like, hey, and if you guys enjoyed everything tonight, go check out my album. Yeah. It's going to be full of stuff that I did not say tonight. Yeah. And to just finally just Viking funeral, this 30 or 45 I've got in my head that I've been living with for so long.
I love the idea of talking about it like a funeral like that. Like we're here to say goodbye.
Yeah, this is as far as this stuff made it, and we're gonna you know, it's an album or a casket, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And we're gonna finally let this go so that there can be another rebirth.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great way to look at it, and it's gonna force you to grow.
Exactly.
Which is which you should always want to do that, right?
But as long as this is an option, on certain nights it's going to come up, and it's just going to be so nice for me to just finally kneecap myself and be like, that's over.
Mm-hmm.
That's over.
Yeah.
And I hope my life gets a little bit more resolved by that time too, because if you watch my sets, you can tell that I don't know what's going on with certain areas of my life, especially the romantic side of my life or the love side of my life, where it's like the set changes just really based on how I'm being treated by certain people.
Yeah.
And it's I'm so ready for some resolution so this thing can just be what it is. Mm-hmm.
Do you have you talk about your upbringing a lot, but it's very ancillary. Have you ever made material about that part of your life?
What do you mean?
Growing up, your mom, your dad, how you were raised, all those types of things. Have you had material about that? And I just haven't heard it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that material yet then.
Yeah, it's me talking about my mom smoking crack and slapping me in a trailer. And so much of my stuff is about.
Yeah, but I feel like it's always very. I don't know. There's not a lot of detail that you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like
I
could sit down and talk to you for about 3 hours about your upbringing.
Yeah, and that's very interesting that you say that, because that really opens up my mind a little bit, because I think that's what I'm talking about all the time, but I guess I am giving these little vignettes, and they're not really describing, I guess, what was really going on.
Well, and since I don't know it, it's I don't know how much a audience on a Saturday night wants to go on that trip with you.
Well, see, and that's what
it is interesting.
That's what I talk about all the time. It's hard to when they're not there to see you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put everything out there.
Yeah, but once you get something like this out, then maybe that's when you're able to go into deep detail later because you did that.
No, that's a good point.
Now you've got kind of he's the guy who did that stuff. And I know a little bit about this, and then you can go deep dive on other things.
Yeah.
And if you have something like that, I think it'll give you the opportunity. There's no reason if you record something like that you don't go on as many podcasts as you can as a guest to talk about it and get people to know about you. That way that can be shared and then help you grow your own audience rather than just, the whatever club audience is coming in that night.
Yeah.
It's time for you to have your own audience.
I agree. And it's taken me, like you said earlier, when we started this show, the idea of having a fan, to me, it's it makes me shrink away a little bit. I struggle with compliments. Sometimes personalities are so weird. I do this saying where it's I'm I'm really fucking good, and then I wake up one day and my shoes are too tight, and I'm going to kill myself. And it's there's this very when I was talking about the floor and the ceiling earlier, it's I need to get there with life. I can't need to trip over a branch and be I think I'm going to kill myself. It's and then going from that to be I'm really good at what I do to so.
But if you think about if you had attempted this a couple years ago, right? All of it would have crumbled.
Oh, of course, and I had opportunities too.
Yeah, and so it's you're now starting to see that the patience of getting personal things sorted out first is now going to make it to where this is going to be the best version that it could be.
I've struggled.
It's you're coming into your time now.
I've been nervous about and I think I'm so close to being there where it's I get nervous about how is this? What's the guitar? What's the art gonna? What's the comedy? What's the music in my soul gonna sound like when everything's okay?
I mean, there's comics that have done that though, right?
Yeah, of course, but they're not.
You were talking about Dave Attell earlier, though.
Yeah,
he would be the most shining example of that, right? He has not gotten worse since he cleaned up, right?
Yeah,
he is. All the comics say he is the killer.
Yeah,
that he's the best.
I just haven't known. There's been so few years of my life where I've known art without chaos, and I've got a kid now, so the chaos has got to we at least got to get it into a little box, but it's chaos is also good. You know what I mean? I want to have a good sometimes it's an adventure, but
you'll always have a sprinkle of chaos though.
Of course, that's just life.
What I mean?
That's just life.
And so I don't think you're not going to lose the edge or whatever.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. Because there's always going to be just enough, you're not going to be the guy to just have the normal, okay, we got it all together. Life is this way now, and this is how it's going to be. It's your life will improve and always get better, but it will never be dull.
Of course,
You
of
know?
course. The years of therapy that would require.
Like Kyle Kinane, mountain bikes now and stuff. It's like there's always something.
Well, I feel weird where I've evolved that way, where it's like all the working out I was doing, and like now I'm unrecognizable from 4 years ago.
Yeah,
and it caused me to lose some material, and I got worried where it's like I was losing a little sense of who I am on stage because of it. But I'm so ready to just fucking put this out and then deal with it and then just become this new version. It's like I feel that way even now at times. Like I get nervous when I'm doing all this stuff and then I start talking about my kid on stage. And sometimes I can feel the audience, especially like a younger, cooler audience. They're like, yeah, we don't have kids. And like, and my version of talking about having kids, like I'm talking about how like white babies are ugly. You know what I mean? It's like, it's still like, I'm still like being mean. I'm still like pushing what I think is acceptable is the way. And then like the turn on that joke always hits where it's like, oh, white people are beautiful, but like, black and brown babies come out of the oven ready to serve. I'm like, you can plate that, send that right out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like it's a totally different thing. So it's like I'm still like it still have to like that punk rock dad, like it still has that edge to it. But I'm talking about being a father and how much I love it. So it's like,
well, I mean, you're gonna have to do the same thing you've done, which is just if it's the material that's true to you, then it'll be fun.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It will. I mean, think of all the comics now that are in their mid 50s that all went through the thing you're just talking about, and it's like you don't like them any less.
Being yourself is so hard, and I don't think people realize. Like I hear other people talk about being themselves, but like if you're truly being yourself on stage, like I've had this arc in my life now where it's like I like sometimes people will mention this like, oh, remember when you did this one shitty thing? Like, yeah, that's my closer. You know what I mean? Where it's like I think like it's not like, and there's a fine line about like turning everything into a joke, but also just owning.
Right.
Who you are and owning your mistakes and being open and vulnerable about it. And it's so difficult, and there's so many facets to like how you handle it. I was performing with that guy from Saturday Night Live the other night, and I remember like looking at the audience and being like, I can feel my head doing math where I'm like, I'm seeing what they are, who they are, where everybody's sitting, who's in the front row, and I'm trying to think what's going to work best in this situation, blah, blah, blah. And then like I just remembered, I was like, oh, these people have no idea what the fuck they want to hear tonight. Mm-hmm. But I know what I want to say.
Yeah.
So that's how we're rolling up there. Like, quit trying to figure them out. Figure yourself out. And that's being who you are and being in the moment. And being in the moment is so fucking hard. And you can only be in the moment by being brave, which is where you let go a little bit. And you go, no, there's not a set list. Like, I'm going to jog out the front door and I'm going to go left or right because it's like you got to start somewhere. You know what I mean? But then after that, I don't know where the fuck we're going. And I might trip over a curb, you know what I mean? But I can't just stop and just turn around. You got to finish the run. So it's been, comedy is such a weird thing. And it's like becoming a child again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at first you don't know what you're doing. There's all these knobs and you don't know what they do. And you're looking at them for them to tell you what to do next. And you're looking for approval. And then you start getting a little good at it and you get cocky, but you still don't know anything. You know what I mean? And then as you start to mature and mature and mature and mature, all of a sudden you're looking at them like, no, let me tell you guys what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm the one that's in charge. I'm the one that's driving this bus. And you're the one that got on it, for better or worse.
Dude, it's funny how like just, both of us, like I said, having a kid around the same time, it totally reorients your maturity of how you're thinking about things. And it's like I would not have been prepared for a kid any sooner in my life than when I had one. But man, I would have benefited from having one. You know what I mean? Just having this outlook, this different. Because you see before you have kids, you see people and you're like, oh, I get it, and it's like you don't get it. And I'm not even talking about like the love of a kid, but just like the stress of trying to, little things like. We're trying to make sure he's saying like please and not just saying give me that. Oh yeah,
we go out to eat. I make him pull out I'm holding him, but I make him pull out the chair for his mother.
Right. And it's like all the little things, and you're like, God, it's so fucking hard just to make a decent human being.
Yeah.
And then you start processing like, oh, that's why there's so many shitty human beings. It's like this is really hard. And then you start having more empathy for shitty people because you're like, it's just who knows how they were raised, like and it's and it does make you if you try anyway, if you try to be a good parent, even if you fail at it, it does make you a better person because you're really opening up your perspective to so many other people. And it's like the analogy you just used about becoming a kid again. it is like that. It's like now every year that he gets older, it's like I'm relearning a new societal thing where it's like, oh, all these years I thought I really understood, how to be nice to people. And then I have to deal with like the line of cars and people going into daycare when I'm trying to pick them up, and how frustrating that can be sometimes. And everybody's got their own shit going on. It's like, you learn so much about yourself. And it's like, and if you try to pay attention to it, you end up improving. But then you still, revert back to like your bullshit ways. But it's like you're just trying to get better. It's like, man, if only there was a way for you to like be a parent when you're like 18 without having to be a parent when you're 18, to learn all that shit,
It made me like that makes me think it's like, and when you talk about teaching somebody how to be a good person, like, and I said that him pulling out the chair for his mom when we go out to eat. And then it's like today we went to meet the teacher and there was like it's a child's playroom. But like there's a table there with 2 chairs and like he pulled the chair out and he looked at his mom and put it right there and did that to her,
That's smooth.
And I was like, oh, it works. Like he knows now to pull the chair out for his mother. He's going to be good on a first date. You know what I mean? He's going to be ready. And, but it reminded me like, I think my son is definitely lucky to have the version of me now that exists. But I think I would have been lucky to have had him like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we could have avoided a lot of the BS, you know what I mean? Because it would have forced me to change earlier,
Yeah, it's fascinating. And then I think a lot about, I told my wife when we were dating, I was like, I could see a happy life with 0 to 2 children. I could argue pros and cons all the way around about having like no kids at all. There'd be so many fascinating things about my life that I would enjoy, and I would not miss having children. Having one's great, and then, having a second one, it's like you could argue what's good, what's bad about that, right?
Yeah.
I really don't want any more than that unless I just become rich and have lots of free time. Because that's the only thing I care about is like, if I have 3 or 4, I'm going to have to get a couple other jobs to be able to afford this.
Yes,
and I won't see them.
When I see people with like 7 kids, I'm like, that seems financially risky. You know what I mean? Like now you're just putting everyone in a bad situation.
Yeah. But I do wonder if I had a second kid, it's like, I wonder how much I would grow. If the first one helped me grow this much, it's like, I wonder if a second or third, or if it just caps off. It's like, no. That's the law of diminishing returns here.
Jim Gaffigan has that great joke where he goes like, I think it was like 5 kids at that point. He goes like, people ask me all the time, like, what is it like having a 5th child? He goes, imagine if you were holding 4 kids and you're drowning and somebody handed you another one. like, I think that was like a perfect example of what that is. But I think one's enough. You know what I mean? Like you're not. No one's, more of a dad because they have multiple, you know what I mean?
No, but just, like your kid, it's like, he came out, it's like as much as you teach him about like the chair and stuff, he's got his own little personality.
Yeah.
Like, you're just like, where the fuck did you learn that? I didn't teach you that.
Oh, I worry about him so much. Like, we were out to eat and he's like staring off in the distance. I remember I looked at his mother and I go, you think he's depressed? And she's like, no, he's 2. And I was like, oh, I just worry. I worry all the time that he's going to get this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's a real fear. I see all of my flaws in him already.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
And I think we're projecting quite a bit because we're projecting our fears onto him.
Sure.
Like I see him get a little angry, or I see him like he'll he doesn't get something, he'll just get on the floor and look down really hard. I'm like, buddy, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. It doesn't help. I promise. It doesn't help.
Mine is when he throws tantrums. I'm like, fuck, that was me. That was me. It's like, so, okay, he's still going to be like, because it's like when I was a teenager, early 20s, it's like I would get so angry about the smallest things.
Yeah,
it's like fuck. I can already see I'm going to have these struggles with him. And it's
young boys in drywall,
dude,
they always end up meeting.
I think I'm gonna if he's into it, I'm gonna try to put him in some kind of combat thing, like do a jiu-jitsu or something.
Yeah,
something where he sees that. It's okay to be angry, but like, don't go fighting everybody because people can hurt you.
Yeah,
you know. And I think being in some sort of environment like that where there's people who are tougher than him to remind him, like, you don't want to do that, but also we'll teach you how to defend yourself
and trying to make him well-rounded. Like I grew up in a violent environment where it's like I have been in my life for way too old, constantly ready to fight whoever wants, like in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
But then also like I'll be at a dive bar reading a book recommended by Reese Witherspoon's book club and cry a little bit. You know what I mean? Like so there's like this, and I hope that he has that. Like I think it's good to have like this well-rounded person. You know what I mean? If life is a school, you want a well-rounded individual.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. Like it's the idea of like I don't want my son to ever get punched in the face, but I think there's a big lesson to learn there.
Oh man, I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, oh, that's a person who's never been punched.
Yeah.
Right? Like they've never had someone just go, you know what, fuck you, and punch you in the face.
Yeah.
And it's like when you do get hit in the face really hard, you're like, and you deserved it.
Of course.
You know,
yeah.
You're like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, but also it removes the fear whenever a scary situation happens where you're not running the other way.
Yeah,
because you've been punched in the face before, and this is a good enough cause. When it is a good enough cause for you to like, I don't want him to be some dude who's seeing some woman be assaulted and be afraid to intervene. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you want just enough of like, you can do it if you need to, but you never want to.
Yes,
you don't ever want to do it. Just like the guns, it's like.
If you had a daughter,
if you had it.
Yeah. If you had a daughter, would you want her to go out? Like, you don't want her to be with a violent man, but I also wouldn't want her to go out with a guy who's going to run the other way if somebody is assaulting her.
When he gives you that handshake and it's strong, you want to be like, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but not too strong. Don't be a fucking dick just because I'm fucking older.
Better not hold her hand like that.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like there's like a fine line.
Yeah.
God, if you ever have somebody shake your hand and you can tell that like that's their whole personality.
Oh, dude. I know. Don't get me started about like the posturing of people and all that.
Yes, yeah, it's like, oh, this is just saying, like, I can tell that you are trying to deliver a message here.
Yeah,
and I promise that it's not landing.
My favorite handshakes are when, like, excuse me, when they fuck up, like when you go in for a handshake and they go in for a fist bump and it gets weird.
Yeah,
because it's almost instantly you're both just like, fuck.
Yeah, who are we? A couple losers.
Hey, man, I'm Travis. Like,
it kind of removes the expectation of whatever's going to happen
that
next.
One's way better than the alpha, like, nice to meet you. Like, I love watching the, there's all those clips of the Trump handshake where he tries to pull everyone to him.
Wait, that's where
it's the power move.
Yeah, it's like, oh, dude, that's your whole personalities. You're not enough. You're not enough.
Recently, they had that clip where he's trying to do it to Joe Rogan. And it's like, dude, you're the president, and he could crush you physically. Like, what are you trying to prove here?
Yes.
Like, don't. What's the point? But it's so ingrained in him. Like, that's my move. And it tells people I have power. And I'm not just picking on Trump. It's like just guys that do that.
But when you see it the other way, it's like whenever somebody does that to me, I just want to whisper in their ear, pull them, and whisper in their ear, it's like, my father didn't love me. You know what I mean? Like it's like clearly you're overcompensating for something here.
I think the older I get, I'm going to go the Howie Mandel route, which is like, I don't want to shake your hand or hug you or anything. I think I just want to be a fake germaphobe and just like always kind of fist bump you or just wave or whatever.
Yeah, just wave. Why can't we just wave at each other? Yeah.
Just to remove the complication of like, especially after COVID, you're like, do we want to touch hands all the time? Do we need to touch each other?
I was even saying that on stage the other day. It's so weird. I mean, men know what men do. Why are we all shaking hands and high-fiving? I don't want to touch your right hand. Like, what's your non-dominant hand? I would like to shake your non-dominant hand. I may be becoming
a germaphobe just because I do think more about that stuff of like how weird it is to eat food that other people have prepared for you, but you don't see them prepare it or like. When I used to work in a corporate environment, I used to think about it all the time with like potlucks. Oh, I don't do potlucks.
Where there's
anymore,
like people,
when
people would bring stuff in for potluck, and I would look at how they're dressed, and I'd be like, I'm not eating those meatballs.
Yeah, that's always my running joke. It's like I don't know how many cats they have, and I don't know how they like their cats to be in the house.
But I'm the opposite with my kid a little bit. Like his mother is very like, that pasta's such good. Like, don't let him eat it. I'm like, that's building immunity. Like, he's fine. I mean, like I'm eating stuff off the ground. I've eaten worse stuff than that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and it builds a little bit. I think there's some truth to where it's like. You take in a little bit of virus, or you get a little bit of negative in you sometimes, and it makes you stronger.
It's true. My stance on it definitely changes day to day, hour to hour.
Yeah,
depending on who it is. Really, I'm probably just judging them the same way you judge a comic walking on stage. I'm probably just like, you look weird. I don't want your casserole.
Yeah. But with my kid, it's like if something hits the ground, I'm like, I mean, he shouldn't eat it. But if he does, he doesn't need to go to the doctor.
Right.
You know what I mean? Isn't that true?
Yeah. Yeah, you know.
If he ate a chip off the ground, off the concrete,
fine.
He's fine. Like he's fine. We don't want him to do it, but like
we should probably put a little more dirt on there.
Yeah,
toughen him up a little bit.
But he doesn't need to go to a doctor. You know what I mean? Like we agree on that.
My wife and I struggle with that. She is a like hand sanitizer Band-Aid family, and I'm a like drink out of the water hose, rinse it off. That's how we were raised, Yeah. And so she's making me more like her, and I'm trying to make her more like me, and we're we're meeting somewhere in the middle here. On
I think meeting in the middle is like one needs to be worried and one needs to be like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, not completely nonchalant about it, but like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the happy medium.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think about what your kid's going to be into?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
I worry about like I have so many hobbies, like whatever he's into, like I'll be there with him.
Yeah.
But,
I think
God, I hope part of it's music. I just hope it's something artistic a little bit.
Yeah. I was talking to some people. I had this musician on here, Matt Tedder. He has great music taste and he's a good musician now and he's working on his success. And like he said, he now loves all the music that his dad loved.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking to him about, guitar and how he got him into an instrument and all this. And his dad kind of just played it cool. It's like the guitars were in the house. They played music, talked about it a little bit. But it kind of just went on to like, he didn't force it down his throat. So I think he wanted it more.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok recently and there was a guy talking about playing piano around his kid. And he goes, he would do this thing where it's like whenever his kid was very young, he'd be like, oh, you want to play on this little piano? And he'd like let him play on it for a minute and be like, okay, that's enough.
Oh.
We got to find something else to do. And he would just do that to him repeatedly until the kid was like, I want that piano. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want him to play an instrument. I would love it to be a popular instrument that you can, it'd be great if it'd be one of the main ones. Like,
if he gets into the oboe, I'll be a little disappointed.
Yeah. But like if he went more like piano, violin, if he went like with an orchestral instrument where you can actually go perform, I'd be fine with that. I just don't want you to have an instrument where it's like nobody gives a shit about that instrument. Like nobody cares about that at all. If you're going to play that one, you need to play 3 others also.
I just want art to be in his life.
Yeah,
a little bit,
and just like please don't be fucking lame. Like I don't care if you're a nerd. I don't care what you're into. Just don't be lame and boring. Like have some hobby that I can get into with you.
Hobby, and I think that's my through line a lot with people about being lame. To me, being lame is I don't care what you are a nerd about, but you need to be a nerd about something.
Anything.
There needs to be something that you know more about than the general person knows about that thing.
Dude, we went to the playground.
And whatever it is, I'll be interested. If you're super fucking into it, I'm willing to hear you out about it a little bit.
We went to the playground near White Rock Lake, or it's at White Rock Lake, and we're sitting there, and there's these like 2 or 3 like grown men, like 60 years old, and they're walking around, and they've got this box with these fucking antennas coming out, and it's like weird, and they're like talking to each other, and they're like pointing around and looking for stuff, and they're like they walk over here, and then they walk to another area, and I'm like, they're not doing anything wrong, but I'm just looking at like, what the fuck is going on with this? What is this? Because at first I thought like they work for the city or something. Maybe they're trying to find like a water main or something. I don't know. Excuse me. So I'm inquisitive. I just walk up and I'm like, hey, I was like, I don't mean to be rude, but like, what are you guys doing? I'm just curious. Like, I'm not trying to give you shit, but like, what is this? And they're, I can't remember the name they had for it, but they're like, oh, we're like radio hunters. And I was like, the fuck? And they're like, yeah. So what they do is they hunt, air quotes, and what they do is they have a radio transmitter that gets hidden somewhere around the lake. And then like somebody else hides that weekend in their radio transmitter group or whatever. And then they just go around the lake trying to find it. And they're honing in, like it's like a ham radio, I guess, or something. And they're like honing in on the radio signals and they're like trying to track it down. And they might put like 10 of them around the lake, and then the next weekend it'll be a different location, and somebody else will hide it. That way everybody else gets a chance to find them. And it's like, that's their fucking hobby.
Yeah. And
it's like, do I want to do that? No. But they looked psyched about it.
Yeah, because they're into something.
And they were even like, yeah, we know it's not mainstream, And I was like, dude, it's, I'm glad I talked to you and learned about it. I like knowing that it's out here.
Yeah.
And it's like, how many people don't commit suicide now because they have a group? Like the internet, that's one of the best things about the internet is like, before, how would those guys find each other to even know that they can make a group of those people to do it? Like people who are like furries or whatever. It's like all this stuff where it's like, you can now find the people that are into the thing you're into. So you're probably not going to go like on a school shooting or kill yourself or be, yell at people. Like you have your group now, you have your peers.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if it's super fucking weird, you're probably going to find somebody who likes it. So it's like, please just have a hobby. Please just don't be one of those people where I'm like, so what you been doing lately? And they're like, it's hot.
Yeah.
Really hot out there.
Yeah. As a person, you can be, page 97 of Pornhub, You know what I mean? But like, I mean, most of us aren't getting there. You know what I mean? Like, well, how desperate are you to find your people? Yeah. But like, it exists.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
If you want to go look for it.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
Nowadays too, it's like it's like, I don't want to do that as a hobby, the radio hunting thing that they did, but I kind of do want to go with them just like one trip.
Yeah.
And just learn. And it's like, all right, I did it. I never want to do it again, but that was interesting. That was fun to learn.
I would like to just hear from them. Why is this your thing?
You know, they said that they just grew up in an era of like, they talked about the ham radio, you know, like they were older guys. So they grew up in the area where like radio waves and all this kind of stuff were new. So it's like you had a radio and the idea of like, oh, I could talk to this person all the way over there.
Yeah.
And so they just turned into like that was their hobby, was like radio club, like building radios or fixing them, or like, can we build a more powerful one, and building antennas. And, now that everything is super easy to communicate with, now they've just kind of morphed it into these like, well, what else can we do with it?
Yeah.
And so, and it sounds silly, but it's like combining old technology like that with new technology usually makes fun stuff. It's like, now all of a sudden, what if they put that technology on like a drone and they're doing the same hunt, but it's aerial, and it's like you could make some weird fun shit with it.
Yeah.
And
I love shit like that. Like, just be into something. You got to be into something.
Yeah.
Or you're boring.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it really is the best time to just try something, because it's like, as much as people want to talk about bullying and all this kind of stuff, it's like, it really is kind of the least judgmental time right now. If you want to be weird and different, it's easy to get out there and just do different shit right now. It's like, some people will always tease you about it, but fuck them, go do your thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I love weird.
Yeah.
I love weird.
Yeah, like I didn't plan on meeting a radio club that day. But now I know if I see some old dudes with antennas, it's like, oh, those are the hunters. Those are the radio hunter guys.
These ham hawks.
Yeah. Dude, and they probably go get beers afterwards. And they're like, man, I can't believe it took you an hour to find that. You fucking suck.
You fucking idiot. Yeah. It's an old person scavenger hunt.
Yeah, it's like, great. Jesus.
Yeah.
Is that because of the knee replacement? What the fuck?
Yeah. It's like an Easter egg had an antenna. Then you guys are great.
What do you think is your strangest hobby?
My strangest hobby. I mean, I don't know if I have any, like, I think my hobbies are a little more, I mean, I'm a heavy reader. I love playing music. I think some people that don't know me very well would be just, I don't know if I was growing up for 20 years. I was such a comic book nerd. Like, the collection I could show you that I had would fill this whole room.
Do you still have it?
No. I sold a lot of it whenever I was going through my drive. I mean, for thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But my knowledge and my collection of those things was vast. And I think sometimes people see me or they hear me talk and they don't see those kinds of things coming.
Yeah. Well, that whole world is very, like, if you know, you know. Yeah. But if you don't know, like, there's a comic book store across the street from Hyenas. And it's like, I've been in that shopping center multiple times for different
Keith's
stores.
Comics,
and I was like, and then there was just one day I was like, there's a fucking comic store? And it's been there for like 15 years or something.
I was so into it where, like, I could go to, like, if you are with like Marvel and DC, like the oversized printed hardcovers, they go out of print really quick. And there was a time in my life I was so aware of what was in and out of print. Like, I could go to Half Price Books and just scan through the bookstore and be like, oh, that's out of print, which meant they're selling it for half price, but I know I can go on eBay and flip it for $350.
Yeah.
So it was like I could see it 10 yards away and be like, oh, that's an out of print Marvel book, because I was just so aware of the collectible culture at the time.
How long did it take you to sell your collection when you were like, need drugs? Like, you sold it all at once?
Well, because I didn't, it wasn't like I had a bunch of single issues, but like I collected like what are called Marvel omnibuses and DC absolutes. So whenever you have those, they're very quantifiable as far as value goes. So like I wouldn't have to go on eBay and just put it up and be like, I hope this goes. You could put it, like, you could find a group of people that do that and just be like, hey, I'm offering this book for $250, and it goes for $300 most places. And it's like I would just have to pick the first person that responded, and that would happen almost immediately. So
was it like months that you ran through it, or?
Yeah, over a period of months. Like, because I could just go online and real quick make $800, $900.
Yeah,
and you got to ship them all out. But it was
how long? Like, how long would the $800 or $900 last you in terms of the addiction?
Oh, not long.
What's not long though?
A couple months. I mean, as far like if we're just talking, because I'm also making money. Yeah, I was still making money, but like I would.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm curious. Like, you knew that if I sold these for $800, it would last me a month.
I mean, I talk about how crazy it was, but I was on like a $20 to $40 a day habit.
Okay.
You know, I mean, whenever you're doing hard drugs, I mean, I also had to go to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I did have stuff to do, and then have shows and stuff. So it's like, but it's probably like a $30 to $50 a day.
So when was the time that you would like partake? Like, would it be after your shows? Would it be between like work and a show?
Whenever I first started, I had this rule about not doing drugs before a show because I knew it would throw off my timing because I was doing so many uppers.
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden, blah, 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 you're just spewing out words. And then I got to a place where like nothing mattered, you know. I was doing it any at all times. I was smoking meth in the car minutes before I'd go on stage and do a show. And
that was the tail end though, right?
And I thought nobody noticed. That's how crazy you get when you're on drugs. Like you think like, oh, I'm playing this off really well. And meanwhile you leave it, everybody's like, notice how
but before when you were responsible with it, it was like, all right, that was a good show. I'm going to go home, have some meth, and that's it.
Yeah. It was manageable at one point.
Yeah.
But it's not like whenever you're doing hard drugs, it's only manageable to a point.
See, I love having your perspective on it because, like, how do you feel? I'm a person who thinks at this point with drugs, we need to try the experiment of legalize everything, but improve education and improve treatment. But now I got somebody like you here. It's like, what's your stance on that? How do you feel when you hear somebody like me who hasn't gone through anything saying like, we should just legalize all of it, let the chips kind of fall? Like it would, you know, I could bore you with all the reasons why I think it would be beneficial. But then you have an addict who would say what?
I'm of two minds of it. I got arrested a lot when I was a kid. So the idea of legalizing it, I like because the system, the American prison system, especially the probation system, does not benefit anybody. It creates an arrest record that will inhibit you from getting further opportunities. And then, you know, it limits where you can live. You know, there's apartment company. And so now what we're doing as a culture is whenever you get these arrest records, it limits the jobs you can get. It limits the places where you can live. So now you're forced. It's taking your ceiling down. Mm-hmm. No matter how high you get your floor, now all of a sudden you're living in a world where your floor is here, but the ceiling of what you are allowed is here. And that doesn't help anybody in the land of freedom and opportunity. You're allowed to walk around, but you can't live there. You mm-hmm. can't get that job, even if you're qualified for it, right? But I mean, it does scare me as someone who is a drug addict. It does scare me. Like if it was still legal for me to go do that, it probably would have been way harder for me to stop doing that. Now, mm-hmm. when we're talking about needles and making things more clean, like if drugs, I'll say this, so that's a good idea. Like if drugs were legal, you would probably be dealing more with like cocaine in its purest form, or maybe a reduced pure form, and then heroin in that way. But things like meth probably wouldn't be. It'd probably be speed. Mm-hmm. You know, I think those hard drugs would change a little bit. But I think even if you legalize drugs, there's going to be the illegal part of it, because you got to realize that if you're making cocaine legal, someone's going to be able to make a drug that creates that same feeling for a little bit less money.
Well, and there's already been stuff coming out that some areas that have legalized, you know, it causes a price increase that some people aren't willing to pay or able to pay. And so they still go an illegal route just for a cheaper product. But, you know, that's still far more legal than there is illegal going on. So it's like the two markets will always be there. You're just kind of slowing one down. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I like that conversation. I like hearing people's opinions on it because I feel like it mirrors the gun control thing a lot. It's like, I don't know anymore if I feel like you should ban guns because I don't feel like you should ban drugs. And those seem like two similar arguments of why and why not. And, but the drug thing fascinates me. I feel like you would, I think you would solve a lot of problems. You would create some new ones, but I think you would solve more than, it's like a seatbelt. It's like, yeah, every now and then somebody dies from a seatbelt, but overall it's better that we have them. I think, just talking about it, I think one of the better solutions, I think, would be like, it's like what they did with decriminalization of marijuana. Mm-hmm. Like you need to decriminalize these drugs
so that people have a chance to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Because whenever you destroy somebody's life because they have a drug addiction, you think it's going to make it easier for them to not be a drug addict?
Right.
Or is this furthering the problem that already existed before they even did the first drug?
Yeah.
Because
most people don't get into a drug addicted life because their life was going incredibly
Exactly.
Some people do, but most people, there was a reason they sought out something.
I think there's always a problem.
Yeah.
There, and what it is might be hard to negotiate or to pinpoint. There's always a problem there. But I think that, to me, I think in a better world, like, even especially drugs like heroin. Like, I don't think heroin should be illegal, but I don't think ruining somebody's opportunities for furthering their chances in life, that's definitely not going to help the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they get arrested, or not even really, maybe they get a ticket, they get a fine, because they're not going to want that either. Like, there's things you can do, just like you did with marijuana.
Right.
But I think ruining somebody's life based on what the drug was, like punishing them even harder, like, well, I mean, it wasn't heroin, it was marijuana. It's like, why are we doing this at all?
Right, yeah.
And at this point, we have to admit that we do it because it props up a system that no longer serves anybody.
100%. And, like, that's where I start getting to... I get back into that political person that I don't want to bore people with, because it's like, once you do realize there's for-profit prison systems that benefit from incarcerating small minor drug infractions, and it's like, okay, is this really for the common good anymore? It's like it's like, yeah, it's probably good to get certain people out of our system, but most of these people are not criminals. But do you think? I'm very curious though. It's like, do you think if it had been legalized long before, do you think you would have fallen into that the same? Or do you think it would have changed, would have been worse, would have been less likely?
That's a good question. I
always wonder, it's like we were talking about that piano, right? It's like, if the drugs are out there all the time and you're just like, oh yeah, those are drugs. Some people can kind of handle it, but it fucks up a lot of people. And you really don't know which one you are until you try it. Are they going to be like, I don't know.
I think I was going to be in trouble either way because I'm a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
So legal or not legal, I think I was probably going to have to go down a dark road before I found some light. But when I think about it, I had years of my life ruined over a gram of marijuana, and it still limits my opportunities because I have a drug arrest on my record, 2 of them for literally a gram of marijuana. And now and I understand that happened when I was 21 or whatever. But, now I'm 38 with a child. Should my chances still be limited? Should my opportunities still be limited?
They won't expunge anything like that. I don't know how that works.
But
like after a certain amount of time.
But just regardless, I'm just talking about morally.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And I agree.
Because now a child's life is limited because I had a gram of marijuana on me in a car when I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the idea of like, well, you fucked up, so you got to deal with the consequences. But like, these are not helpful to society, to the child, to
and a lot of the people
else.
who want to be strict, and I have my own like bone to pick with like religions. Yeah. So I'm picking on Christians just because I'm raised in Texas, and that's what our predominant religion here. But I'm sure most religions are this way. But a lot of those Bible thumping Texas religious people who are very like law abiding and like, if you didn't want to deal with that, Lawrence, then you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but also like you follow this gospel that teaches like second chances are real and everyone makes mistakes and nobody's perfect. Even Jesus wasn't perfect, Yeah. And it's like, all right, well then why are we being so hard on Lawrence here?
And I don't think you can be like, I don't believe in also the Catholic idea of like you can just go, do a couple Hail Marys and you're forgiven. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah,
I don't think a confessional booth's going to solve everything. But at the same time, like you probably need to make some changes that are visible and open, and people can go, okay, well, you're not doing that kind of stuff anymore. So it's time for everybody to move on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But there has to be some growth. There has to be some changes. There have to be some clear lines of results. But at the same time, I think destroying somebody's life over something when they were younger, that then, because now what you're doing is you're creating generational trauma.
Right.
because now the child is suffering the consequences of the father or the mother's mistakes, which is only going to further the cycle of that thing repeating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now this child's growing up with less opportunities, so he's more likely to end up on a fucking podcast talking about, you know, why he does comedy. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, we want to avoid these things. You know what I mean? Every generation should get better, but if you keep punishing people past the line of where they should be punished for what was occurred, you know, then that is going to create generational trauma.
Do you think in your specific situation, you would have gotten help or treatment sooner if it, like, I think we should have free health care, and part of that I think should be mental health care and substance abuse, right? Like, you should be able to just go, I got a problem, I need to check in. If that was like a free service, do you think you would have taken it, or would it have mattered?
I know I would have definitely used the therapy and the help and somebody to talk to. I know and if drugs were illegal, I think it would help me in the way that I was so ashamed. Like, cause I hang out with people that like aren't like doing meth. Like that was just me. And it took me so much longer to come clean about it. And I let it ruin my life to a degree I knew was past where I should have let it get. Because if it would have been cocaine or if it would have been something else, it would have been much easier for me to be like, hey, this is what I've been doing and I need some help. Mm-hmm. You know, but because I was ashamed, and I've talked about this on stage, because I was ashamed of the drug I was using, it was very hard for me to come out and be open and honest about it.
Mm-hmm. So if you had an option to just like slip into a treatment center without anybody knowing, you might have done it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, once I came clean with everybody about what was happening, it was me crying for help. It was me saying like, hey, this is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. This is not going to last. And, you know, and I still like, the idea that I could have gotten real help during those times is like a painful thing for me to even think about, because I went through it.
Well, I was going to say,
hard way.
If I remember correctly, you just did it on your own, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, I feel like I did it in a room that was on fire.
It still blows my mind that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, which tells you how much you were ready to get done with it.
And there's been some side effects based on how I got clean.
Because what's the normal thing? It's like methadone clinics and stuff, right? Like they kind of
dose
you off of it. Is that heroin? Okay.
Well, and for me, what really helped me is, like I said, I woke up in Seattle, and the idea that I was able to legally smoke weed at that time, and I didn't have the kid yet, so I wasn't taking drug tests. The fact that I could go down the street and get some wine and a couple legal joints and like relieve the pain a bit helped a lot.
It still blows my mind that you're able to do some drugs, you know what I mean, and it not spiral again.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I always say about alcohol too. I mean, it's like I think if you smoke too much weed, you're probably not going to go do some meth. You know,
but there's those people who say like, you know, I'm an addict, anything will trip that off. You know, like Russell Brand's a great one. It's like he can't do a single thing or it'll spiral out again. And
I think to me, like, I mean,
you know, it's easy to lump like, well, you're an addict, so if you do anything, if you do, you know, caffeinated coffee, you're going to spiral back into meth.
Yeah, and I'm the type of person, like, some things are all or not, where it's like when it comes, like, if I touch cocaine, we'd have a problem. We would have a real problem on our hands. But if I smoked weed, I think if I have 8 vodka sodas and I don't go like, let's go get some meth, like, I think I'd be okay if I smoked a joint. Yeah. You know what I mean? And everybody has to go through it their own way. So like Russell Brand, and I love Russell Brand, but like the people that are like it's like you know, you can have a bad day and be a Christian. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, it's not like this fucking all or nothing thing to me. Like, you can miss a day of working out and still be fit. You know what I mean? You can slack off at your job one day and not be lazy. You know what I mean? And to me, it's like,
see, that's the education part we need, though. It's like if we had real drug education in our country. Oh,
for sure.
You know, at an early level in school. Yeah. It's like, you know, drugs, alcohol, whatever vices like that. It's like even gambling or something. It's like there should just be a class, you know, the same as like PE or health that just goes over these things of like, you know, starting at, I don't know, probably like middle school. where, every year you're kind of just talking about a new one of those topics and going through it. And, it's like, it's tough stuff, but it's like you have health class, you have all these things that you're supposed to go through. It's like, this is a part of life that would probably help a lot of people if they were like, oh, so I could get highly addicted to this and it could ruin my life? Yeah. But some people, it's really fun and they're totally cool with it. Yeah. Well,
I was the same way.
It's a roll of the dice, huh? And it's like, yeah, you got to be real careful with this shit.
And I understand too, like sometimes, like I got a firsthand education on drugs as a kid. I watched my mother kick heroin. Like my mom was smoking crack. Like I saw all these things firsthand as a child, and I knew what they did to me. It was all very painful for me. And I saw how painful it was for her. And I ended up making the same mistakes. So I also understand, like, just showing a kid what it might do to them, even if you show it to them the most painful way possible, does not mean it's going to help.
Good point. It's interesting.
Because some people just they've got the devil in their bloodstream.
Yeah, well, and that's just a whole, like, how many different branches could you go down to just about, your early years and how that molds all your decision making. You know what I mean? It's all different stuff. Which again, it's like free mental health care and places people can go is a necessity. It's something we need,
I think people that are like me too, and this is, I think people need to see opportunity for better things. Like whenever I was a kid, I remember like where I lived in East Dallas, like, I talk about all these dark things that was happening. That was everybody around me. Like it was so normalized. Like I didn't really realize how crazy it was. And then whenever I came to Plano to live in Plano, I got shipped to Plano to live with my grandparents because mom's in prison. It's like all of a sudden I saw these big houses. People got pools in their backyards. People got a mom and a dad, and they're taking photos. I ride my bicycle around this neighborhood, and like all of a sudden my viewpoint of what was possible was changing. I didn't know that people had pools in their backyards. That was a foreign concept to me. I thought only like, uber wealthy people had second stories on their house. You know what I mean? But now all of a sudden I got to Plano, and then over a period of time, those kinds of opportunities and that kind of lifestyle then became normalized for me. So more is expected out of you because you see that there's more that you could have. Not just for yourself, but for your family. Yeah, you can see that you can have healthy ideas about yourself. You see that not every day has to be a struggle. You see that you can have some comfortability around you. But whenever you're living in a more toxic environment, you're just thinking about tomorrow. Yeah, so it's like I think showing those kids what could happen with drugs. Like sometimes you're showing them just the negative. And then sometimes you have to show them like, hey, here's what happens also if you don't do it. Right. Because, hey, you could ruin your life. And it's like, hey, you could have a great life. Sometimes I think that needs to be a little bit more is what's instilled. Because that kid that ends up doing that drug anyway, he did that drug anyway because he thought he didn't know enough about the good part. Like he didn't know he could have been more. He was just worried that he was going to not be that. That's a great point. But it's such a nuanced thing. So you got to figure out how to talk to different people about different things. Yeah, you'll have to tailor it to each person who's going through that issue. Yeah. It's fascinating though. Yeah. And I've struggled with the idea of like being I struggle with the idea about speaking on it from a recovery level. Like I'm okay speaking about it on like what it's like to go through it, but I struggle with the idea of, and I'm getting there, about what it's like to be on the other side of it. I think it's so hard to talk to drug addicts when they're going through it. I think the only thing you can do is be like, hey, people love you, people support you, and we want you here. Yeah. Even to me, sometimes that felt like, fuck you. Like when things are so bad and people are like, hey, we really, we love you and we want you around. It's like, fuck you. Like, why are you acting like this? You know what I mean? Like I had such a thing where people were like, I would get angry. People were like, oh, you're acting crazy. Like people would be like, shit, you've been smoking meth and staying up for 3 days at a time. That's insane. And then they'd be like, also, why are you acting like this? I'm like, we just talked about why I'm acting like this. Like, give me a little bit of space here to like exist. You know what I mean? We just talked about it. Yeah, you just told me what I was doing was crazy, and then you're like, why are you acting crazy? And it's like everything you just said. Yeah, you know what I mean. So, and I still haven't, I guess I'm not enough on the other side of it to really reflect, because that's who I am. Like to figure out how I would talk to somebody that was going through what I was going through. But I know I needed like maybe a hand on the small of my back. I needed some encouragement that wasn't just like, you fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I got a lot of that. And a lot of it was very well deserved. But whenever it was time to get better, it's time to get better. You know? And it's like it's hard to be like, I don't forgive myself, but also it's time to stop hating it. You know, and I do realize I've reached that point where it's like, it's for the betterment of everybody around me, including my son, for me to stop hating the mistakes that I made. You know?
Yeah. I think you're getting there, man.
Yeah, I think
like I said, every time I've talked to you, you know, over the past couple of years, it just seems like it's getting better and better, you know? And like, I say that because like the first couple times I saw you, I was like, you know, I'd talk to my wife, I'd be like, I really hope he's not just, you know, putting on a happy face. Like it's the facade of like, everything's going great, you know?
Yeah.
And then you find out later, like there's the huge backslide, you know, that happens to so many people. So it's nice to see that it's, you know, it's sticking. Like it's actually going that way, and it's not just, because you know what I mean? Some people clean up and they're just like, everything's fantastic. It couldn't be better. And they don't mean it though. They're just like, oh, I heard I'm supposed to be this way now.
No, I still have terrible days. I had a really rough day today, but like you get better at being like, yeah, my car was broken down this morning, but now it works. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was a rough day, but like it's, you learn to let it go a little bit easier, maybe focus on the positives, you know, but it feels great to be on the other side of it.
Yeah. It shows, man. You look great.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, like you said, you look totally different.
Yeah.
You know, you look healthier. It's like, I can tell you're working out now and keeping in shape.
I think for people when they're going through drug addiction, I think the best advice I could give whenever they're starting, like when they're already clean, after they're clean, is you got to build systems. You got to build systems that are going to allow you to maintain staying off drugs and to maintain growth. Because it's for so long, like you get treated like just like you got to start believing in yourself. You got to start thinking past what you did, or like the fact that like. And I always say that when I first got off drugs, every day was so hard, just because you're eating breakfast, you're driving your car, you're shopping for groceries, anything you're doing, you're also doing that and not smoking crack. You know what I mean? It's like so. It's like whenever you finally get to the place where like I'm just having dinner, I'm just going shopping for groceries, and I'm not doing that and also not doing something else. Like once you get to that freedom space, that's when you start building systems. Like, you know, you got to realize that all that energy you were putting into drugs has got to start going somewhere else. And the sooner you figure out where to direct that, the better off you're going to be. And for me, I think the third and final solution has been purpose, finding purpose. And that doesn't mean my life changed, but I found purpose in the things I was doing. That before I was just doing it.
Yeah.
And then you start realizing, oh, there's purpose in this. And I'm doing this because it helps me with this and it makes me feel good. What makes me feel good? Because that's going to lead you in the right direction, I think.
There it is. Let's end it on that, man.
Boom.
It's a great way to end it. First of all, it's the Oddball History Podcast.
Oddball History. Please check us out.
It's really good,
show.
man.
It's a really good show.
You know, it's like every time you see somebody starting a new podcast, you're like, well, you know, I'll give it a roll. But I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't think it would be bad because I know the three of you are funny.
Yeah.
You just never know, like, am I going to enjoy this podcast? How's it going to go? Everybody in the world has a podcast sometimes. But it's good, man. You guys have a great dynamic. And I'll say this, like between the three of y'all, there's all these fun moments of like, oh, these guys are really smart. And then sometimes you're like, these guys are idiots.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Highs and lows.
We're all smart about different things, yeah.
And it's super entertaining. And I think you guys have something really fun. And it's not that like, you know, I think a comic's first move is like, we're going to make a funny comedy podcast. But there's actual interesting topics, and that's the guts of it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it really fun. So yeah, I hope y'all keep doing it for a while.
And
so check that out. And then where do you like everybody to follow you? Do you more Instagram or
more Instagram and TikTok, like at Lawrence Rosales. I post clips all the time. I always post shows. You know, if you're a fan of this show and you want to come see me at a show, just DM me. I'll get you in for free.
Sweet. And this is going to come out probably like mid-August. You got any shows coming up?
Yeah, I mean, just follow me on Instagram, and I'll let you know where I'm going to be.
Perfect. All right, man. Well, always a pleasure, dude. One of my favorites.
Appreciate it, man.
All right.
The I'm a Fan of podcast, music, comedy, and more.